always close by, which makes keeping your car clean convenient. Along with unlimited car washing.
But what about students who have a disability? Our back-to-school coverage continues tonight.
Also, the 2020 legislative session paved the way for hemp cultivation in South Dakota. Now lawmakers have submitted their plan to regulate the commodity to the USDA. What that plan entails coming up. Bill.
Nice and summery out there again today. We're going to keep this kind of stuff around for a while. Your forecast coming up in a few minutes. You're watching Dakota News Now.
On fire devices.
It's here. Get huge savings with over 2,400 vehicles.
KELO News starts now.
Live from KELO Media Group. KELO News at 6.
It's legal. You can...
60 months with approved credit on In Stock New 2020. The WX Lion Fairgrounds through Labor Day. Or BillionAuto.com. Tonight, history in the making at the Democratic National Convention. Kamala Harris set to become the first woman of color to accept a major party's vice presidential nomination. How she'll make the case for herself and Joe Biden. Plus Barack Obama, the first look at his message tonight. And Hillary Clinton back to take new aim at her old foe, President Trump. State of emergency, over 30 wildfires raging in California. Tens of thousands evacuated, dozens of homes destroyed, extreme heat supercharging the flames. The coronavirus at colleges, alarming images, students evicted after this pandemic party. Triple tropical threat, the hurricane and 2 developing systems on the move tonight. NBC News exclusive images, mail sorting machines removed from postal facilities, and as the president attacks mail-in voting, the new video from his campaign filling out his own mail-in ballot. Massive protests against the man known as Europe's last dictator. Our Richard Engel is there. Drama in the courtroom, the confessed Golden State Killer coming face-to-face with survivors. A powerful confrontation. And the inspiring way a town is keeping businesses afloat by feeding families.
This is NBC Nightly News, the Democratic National Convention. Here is Lester Holt.
Good evening on a very busy news day. We start with the Democratic National Convention, a night after a homespun coast-to-coast roll call delivered the presidential nomination to Joe Biden. His running mate, Senator Kamala Harris, will take her place in American political history this evening. The first woman of color to be nominated on a presidential ticket. Also on the virtual stage, a man who carved his own place in history, former President Barack Obama, ready to deliver some choice words for President Trump. Peter Alexander sets the scene for us.
Taking center stage for the Democrats in Delaware tonight, Kamala Harris, the first black woman and Indian American ever on a major party ticket. The daughter of immigrants to be introduced by this new video.
When she says for the people, it is in every ounce of who she is. She's for us. She's for us.
Harris tonight expected to take on President Trump directly and to praise Joe Biden. Right now we have a president who turns our tragedies into political weapons. Joe will be a president who turns our challenges into purpose. And former President Obama, according to prepared remarks, will deliver his most forceful indictment of Donald Trump yet, saying he's shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves. Obama will also tout his former VP. He made me a better president. He's got the character and the experience to make us a better country. Hillary Clinton will warn against a repeat of her 2016 defeat. For 4 years, people have said to me, I didn't realize how dangerous he was. I wish I could go back and do it over. This can't be another woulda, coulda, shoulda election. It comes as Biden was officially named his party's nominee.
Thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart.
That moment punctuating a memorable roll call celebrating all 57 states and territories and making Rhode Island's favorite appetizer go viral.
Calamari is available in all 50 states.
The convention's second night highlighting some of the party's rising stars, like Georgia's Stacey Abrams.
In a democracy, we do not elect saviors. We cast our ballots for those who see our struggles and pledge to serve.
And it's political old guard taking direct aim at President Trump.
When this president goes overseas, it isn't a goodwill mission, it's a blooper reel.
Former President Bill Clinton arguing entertainment should not trump leadership.
If you want a president who defines the job of spending hours a day watching TV and zapping people on social media, he's your man.
And casting Biden as a man of character and decency, Jill Biden from the empty school where she once taught, acknowledging her family's tragedies and embracing her husband as the right person to help America out of its current crisis.
I know that if we entrust this nation to Joe, he will do for your family what he did for ours. Bring us together and make us whole.
Peter joins me now. Peter, I understand there's some new information about President Obama's speech for this evening.
Yeah, Lester, that's right. President Obama will deliver tonight's searing speech from the Museum of the American Revolution in Philadelphia. In many ways, the birthplace of the country. That location chosen, I'm told, by those close to the former president to underscore that it's our very democracy at stake in this election. Lester?
All right, Peter Alexander tonight. Thanks. And Kamala Harris will make history this evening when she reintroduces herself, if you will, to the Democratic Party. Kristen Welker takes a closer look at the prosecutor turned politician.
As Kamala Harris prepares to take on the fight against President Trump, her record as a prosecutor will guide her.
She wants to know and demands to know what policy choices are going to be in the best interest of the real person who's experiencing life right now.
Having served as San Francisco's district attorney and the first black female attorney general of California,
my whole life, I've only had one client, the people.
Harris is no stranger to clashing with critics on all sides. In 2004, as a DA, some police unions disapproved of her decision not to pursue the death penalty against a man who shot and killed a police officer. And as Attorney General, she faced criticism from some progressives who argued she did not do enough to address two high-profile police shootings of black men.
She did not turn out to be, from our perspective, the progressive prosecutor that she promised to be when many of us supported her.
Latifah Simon worked with Harris in San Francisco.
When I decided to go work for Kamala, I knew that she, like me, envisioned a day where fairness is truly fair and this thing called justice is truly just, and that justice can in fact be blind.
Harris was praised for creating a database of crime statistics open to the public. She also required some police officers to wear body cameras. And more recently, Harris was applauded by many Democrats for her tough questioning of top Trump officials.
I wouldn't,
Yes or no?
Former Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell, once a district attorney himself, says Harris's ability to build a strong case will make her a key asset. What do you expect to see from her on the campaign trail?
Kamala Harris will prosecute the case against Donald Trump. She's going to make the case that Donald Trump has failed and doesn't deserve another term.
When Senator Harris walks on stage tonight as the vice presidential nominee, she will only be the third woman in this country's history to do so. She'll be introduced by her sister, her niece, and her stepdaughter. Harris has always said Kamala is her most important title. Lester.
All right, Kristen, thanks very much. Let's bring in our political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, right out. Chuck.
Now, the third leading cause of death in the United States. It is a far greater risk than any of those other things, and the numbers, as you know, continue to go up. This is over 6 or 7 months.
Right, and I guess, as you point out, right, at the third leading cause of death, you can actually see those numbers. Now, Dr. Reiner, this point about the this convalescent plasma, according to the New York Times, the FDA emergency use authorization for that plasma is on hold because Dr. Fauci and others thought that the evidence that was out was too weak. So the president was asked about it today, and he said something pretty incredible, right? Because I want to, again, just emphasize what I just said. Dr. Fauci and others say that the evidence is too weak. Here's what the president said.
It could be a political decision because you have a lot of people over there that don't want to rush things because they want to do it after November 3rd, and you've heard that one before. But I've heard fantastic things about convalescent plasma.
Okay, so let me just make it loud and clear. A lot of people over there at the FDA on the task force are political, don't want him to win, so they're holding back something that's an amazing cure that could work. That's what he's saying. What do you say, Dr. Reiner?
Well, this is a very interesting story, and let me just start by saying no one wants this to work more than me. Maybe Sanjay, but other than Sanjay, no one wants this to work more than me. We're desperate for an effective therapeutic, and the president has been teasing this for the last few weeks at his pressers, saying, you know, big news on therapeutics coming soon. I think he's been anticipating that the FDA would grant an emergency use authorization for convalescent plasma. Look, the problem is that although it's been given to about 60,000 people in this country, we don't have randomized clinical trial data, and the existing data is super weak. But you know, I was encouraged actually by Drs. Fauci and Collins standing up to the FDA, standing up to what must be immense political pressure to approve this because we don't have the data. And we're going to need this kind of scientific leadership as we roll out vaccines to tell the public that this is safe and effective. So the fact that Fauci and Collins have put the brakes on this encourages me. There are adults still at work in this administration. I hope we do the clinical trials. There was an op-ed in the Washington Post a few weeks ago by 4 former FDA commissioners desperately urging us to do the randomized clinical trials to understand whether it works or not, and we need to get it done.
Sanjay, what do you say from all the sources you talked to? And the president just basically directly saying that people at the FDA and Dr. Fauci would rather not have a cure, so that you know, to prevent him from winning.
It's totally ridiculous. I mean, you cannot disentangle anything from politics nowadays. As Dr. Reiner mentioned, there's all sorts of different reasons that they would want the additional data. And keep in mind, you know, this is an FDA that did give emergency use authorization to hydroxychloroquine not that long ago, despite having basically no evidence around that. So the fact that they're clamping down on this, taking this seriously, with guidance from Dr. Fauci and Collins. I mean, the FDA still is its own autonomous agency. They act on their own. They, you know, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Collins don't control the FDA, but clearly there's a message being sent here that we're going to be very, very clear in terms of what we're going to even give emergency use authorization.
Yeah, I mean, it's stunning.
Are you still nervous about going to the doctor's office during the pandemic? You shouldn't wait to get treated. Coming up in just 9 minutes.
Positive. Only on Dakota News Now.
Coronavirus at all or no? Coronavirus. I've been drinking Coronas all day. I personally think it's a hoax.
It all comes as this week schools from UNC Chapel Hill to Notre Dame to Michigan State reverse course and switch from in-person to virtual classes amid a spike in coronavirus cases.
The safety of our students, faculty, and staff, and the safety of the campus is the most important thing for MSU as we move forward.
An entire Oklahoma State sorority is now under quarantine after 23 members tested positive.
We expected something to happen eventually. Unfortunately, it happened super soon.
Many universities are now requiring students to sign COVID codes of conduct. This one from Northwestern University requires them to, among other things, wear a mask in public spaces and cooperate with any contact tracing efforts by the university. It points out that tuition and fees also will not be refunded or prorated if I choose to participate in courses offered remotely. At the University of Tennessee, the chancellor is threatening expulsion.
There will be the harshest punishment I can think about it for someone who willfully does not cooperate with contact tracing.
Professor Aaron Pallas of Teachers College at Columbia University is relieved to be online only this semester and says keeping college students in check is wishful thinking.
I think the codes of conduct are largely unenforceable. I think they're aspirational. It's fine to ask students to commit to these things. I have no confidence that students, in fact, will do so. They're at an age where they are prone to risky behaviors, not following rules.
It's one thing to limit the spread of COVID-19 in a classroom. It's another to stop students from spreading it at off-campus parties, a challenge that many schools are grappling with across the country right now. Lester?
Yeah, huge challenge. Gabe, thanks very much. In 60 seconds, the post office controversy and exclusive new images showing what's already happened to some of those sorting machines.
Esther.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be here until Thanksgiving or whenever they have us here. So
Now, if a student does feel sick, they can get tested by the university on campus. And SDSU staff says they will be able to know the result within a day, so they can follow quarantine instructions. Jacob Sersosimo, Dakota News Now.
All right, well, we are going to take a break here momentarily, and then we'll be back with our chief meteorologist, Phil Schreck, with a look at the first alert forecast on a day where the heat is still there and the humidity creeping up just a little bit.
Hi, I'm... Don't fit your budget and your family? Right.
To Maryland, but it's still a state where the governor is not the most helpful when it comes to encouraging people to vote. Talk about how you motivate voters in a state where people know, at least they think they know how it's going to go. And do you think that tonight will provide additional motivation given the impediments that are there because of COVID?
So I'm hopeful that tonight will provide that additional motivation, because at the end of the day, Baltimore City, and Baltimore City goes to the state of Maryland, right? 28% of Baltimore's population lives in poverty. 35% of children live below poverty. There are over 18,000 vacant houses, 16,000 vacant lots. We know that the health disparities are disparately impacting communities of color, especially in Baltimore City. And so the stakes could not be any higher. We have got to get out. We have got to get this man out of office. And I'm encouraged tonight that we will hear from my forever president and my role model and my friend Kamala Harris, and they will motivate us, even as a Democratic state, to not take any of this for granted. Our life literally depends on it, on this election.
Well, I think for a lot of young black girls out there, you two ladies are also role models to them. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms from the great city of Atlanta, the home of John Lewis. Marilyn Mosby from the state that is the home of Harriet Tubman. And we appreciate
you.
Exactly, my new home, my new home. And Dan Pfeiffer, who got the booby prize tonight for having to respond to Eric Trump, and he did a great job. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of you. And still, no national strategy. Up next on the readout, still no national strategy on the coronavirus. And what was the President of the United States busy doing today? Why, he was calling for the boycott of a major American employer, of course. And also a new video of postal sorting equipment in pieces outside of a Michigan post office. While in New Jersey, the Trump campaign is suing to make it harder for people to vote because of course. Plus,
we have lived that feeling of helplessness when someone you love is very sick and access to health care is a matter of life and death.
When doctors, nurses, and home health care aides in Philadelphia have to risk their own lives to protect others.
We're banning business practices that have exploited workers and cost them hundreds of millions of dollars in lost wages.
Young Democratic leaders get a chance to shine at the DNC, and 3 of them will join me. Back with more of the readout after this.
Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ pride. On the unacceptable column, you have Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, all MAGA attire, and any political affiliated slogans or material. Well, earlier today, the White House press secretary actually asked Goodyear to clarify their statement, but so far the company is sticking with this. Quote, "We ask that associates refrain from workplace expressions in support of political campaigning for any candidate or political party, as well as similar forms of advocacy that fall outside the scope of racial justice and equity issues." Well, now, Joe Biden is actually weighing in with a statement of his own to the Beacon Journal, writing, quote, "To President Trump, those workers and their jobs aren't a source of pride, just collateral damage in yet another one of his political attacks." And now it'll be, very interesting to see just how much the president's call to boycott Goodyear tires is going to impact their bottom line. Martha?
Kristen, thank you. Kristen Fisher tonight at the White House, right behind us this evening. So in Portland, Oregon, overnight, protesters set a government building ablaze, igniting it with lighter fluid inside. Investigative journalist Drew Hernandez has been following the violence there, capturing this video of an activist yelling about what she wants to see happen to police officers.
They need to send you to the electric chair and let you fry like a piece of burnt bacon.
Drew Hernandez joins me live, and then Secretary Ben Carson on how to restore peace to America's cities and more after this.
We're a country right now, whatever your politics are, but on both sides we're starving for heroes.
virtual, it's to some extent playing to the advantage, I think, of Joe Biden, because we're seeing all 50 states and we're seeing such a diversity of America, and that's our strength right now.
Well, some of the voices folks are hearing are people like Bernie Sanders, who's a Democratic socialist, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. There's a conversation about the fact she only had a minute or so to speak, nominating Senator Sanders. But there is a diversity, and is the left of the party an issue and a problem for candidates like you?
Oh, well, look, the left of the party is always an issue. They try to make it an issue. The fact of the matter is, people just push that aside. You know, look, we've got voices on the left, but, you know, look what happened in Georgia just recently. I think it was Georgia, where a QAnon conspiracy theorist won the Republican nomination to go to Congress, and President Trump tweeted out that she's one of the rising stars. So I don't think people should be criticizing the voices on the left of the Democratic Party, voices who need to be heard, voices that are important out there for all of us going forward. If they're not going to criticize the racist comments from folks like the lady who won the primary in Georgia the other day, and this QAnon conspiracy theorist that Trump tweeted out as a rising star. So we're going to have those voices on both sides in both parties. But I think the fact that the diversity of the Democratic Party is so reflective of America, it's more reflective of Alabama than people understand and can appreciate. That's why the strength of this party and the strength of this ticket, I think, is going to carry us forward to victory in November.
Senator Doug Jones of Alabama.
I want that too. By buying local, by saying no to websites.
Sanford's Health Fast Track Orthopedic Clinic is operating during the pandemic.
About a year ago, Cody Breen found himself in need of medical care after a fall left him with a broken.
Well, Aaron, President Obama was very careful in those first few years when he was out of office to criticize President Trump, but tonight he is going to hammer away at his successor, offering what looks like one of his sharpest rebukes yet of the president. This comes 16 years after Obama first spoke at a Democratic National Convention, and it also comes as his own legacy is on the line, as he is hoping that his former partner, his former Vice President Joe Biden, will be elected in November. And Obama is also expected to speak firsthand about what he witnessed with Joe Biden in those 8 years they spent together in the White House, giving personal testimony to his character and leadership. The former president is expected to say, over 8 years, Joe was the last one in the room whenever I faced a big decision. He made me a better president. He's got the character and the experience to make us a better country. Obama will add, tonight, I am asking you to believe in Joe and Kamala's ability to lead this country out of dark times and build it back better. Now, President Obama will deliver his speech from the Museum of the American Revolution in Philadelphia, about 30 miles from here, the Chase Center. That we're told the reason that location was chosen was so that he could make the point that America's democracy is at stake in this election. Aaron?
All right, picking, of course, the cradle of it, right? Where that...
I pray to Almighty God.
I think all of us who are fighting, whatever you're...
All for a quote today.
Just always thought dog food.
California.
This is just incredible.
To 11-year-old Katerina Shadrack in Colorado.
What's up, Denver?
Katerina has been drawn to Kamala Harris since her presidential run.
Oh my God!
We first met her at a Harris presidential rally in Denver. Tonight, Katerina will be featured in a video that is part of the convention program, talking about Harris and what she means to girls like her.
Seeing a woman who looks like me do it is kind of like me seeing myself doing it, because honestly, in my opinion, I do kind of look like her. You see yourself and you put that goal that, yes, I'm going to do it.
A reflection that South Asians are celebrating across social media. Top Chef host Padma Lakshmi posted side-by-side pictures of her Indian American childhood next to Harris's, with the words, representation matters.
So we're both Indian, yes, but actually we're both South Indian.
Yes. Actress Mindy Kaling, best known for her role in The Office, talked about her Indian heritage with Harris in this video last year. She tweeted, "Was there ever more of an exciting day?" Katerina's father says Harris's nomination is a marker, not just today,
but for tomorrow.
South Asians are a big part of the workforce and not so much part of the leadership. But we can lead, we can bring about change, and we can help, and we can make people feel better about living here in the United States.
Oh my God, it's historic for me, and it's historic for my daughter, for my son.
It means being seen, says Dita Bhargava. She's now organizing for the Biden-Harris ticket, hoping American politics will now reach and target Asian Americans, the fastest growing racial group in the U.S.
To see someone like her be able to not just crack those ceilings, but break through them, it's incredibly inspiring. I think it's going to be having a huge impact on all of our communities.
Hi, everyone.
Now, Kamala Harris is accepting the nomination amid a changing political landscape. In 2020, more women of color are running for Congress than ever before in American history. And Aaron, yes, a historic moment tonight for Kamala Harris, but she's also a representation of the changing times. Aaron.
Absolutely. Kyung, thank you. And our special coverage of the Democratic National.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Another big evening. Both Kamala Harris and former President Barack Obama speaking at the Democratic National Convention. Of course, Fox will have coverage of all of it. We're on day 3 of the convention. The question is, how's it going so far? Well, former Democratic candidate Marianne Williamson has been following it closely. She describes the experience as, quote, like binge watching a Marriott commercial. That's about right. Pretty unappetizing. Platitudes heaped upon cliches, smothered in a thick sauce of self-righteousness and stupidity. No normal person could eat what the DNC is serving this week. We tune in because it's our job. So far, the main excitement has been watching just how shamelessly they can lie. The goal appears to be complete reality inversion. Professional rich lady Michelle Obama told America that she was oppressed. The criminally negligent governor of New York bragged about how well he handled the coronavirus. And then Jeffrey Epstein's old pal Bill Clinton showed up to speak as the party's moral voice. There's been a low-grade thrill in watching all of this, we'll admit. At the very least, you've got to tip your hat to their audacity. They don't tell small lies in the Democratic Party. They go all the way. You catch them stealing your wallet, and they arrest you for theft. And then they give you a lecture about how crime doesn't pay. To longtime students of the liberal mind, none of this is new. The left long ago built an entire political party based on the Freudian principle of transference. They displaced their own sins onto you, thereby cleansing their consciences and allowing them to seize the moral high ground. It's a clever trick. But at this point, it's an old trick. We know how it's done. The public certainly seems to have figured it out. Last night, the Democrats' convention lost in the ratings to a variety show called America's Got Talent. A pair of jugglers from the Philippines, brothers, wearing glow-in-the-dark headbands, did a yo-yo demonstration on stage. And that outrated Dr. Jill Biden by a lot. We could have told you that was going to happen. Only Nicole Wallace wants to not watch another speech by Dr. Jill Biden. And by the way, what kind of doctor is she? Some of us aren't feeling well. We never learned that answer either. What the Democrats should have done is put the rest of their proceedings on TV. That would get an audience. You might not.
Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, and Elizabeth Warren, all of whom, in addition to their day jobs, live full-time, rent-free inside the president's head. In just a moment, we will be talking live here with one of Senator Harris's best friends in the United States Senate. Senator Cory Booker is going to be joining us. She also competed with him in this year's presidential primary. We've got a lot to come tonight. This is a big night. I have to tell you, it's been exciting, and it is a privilege to cover these nights all the time. I have had butterflies in my stomach all day. I am newly nervous, newly anxious about this. I don't know. What are you nervous about? I just, well, you know me, I just don't want to blow it. But also, I mean, this really is history. I mean, a woman, there have been this is the third time in history when we've had a woman running as the vice presidential nominee on a major party ticket, right? We had Geraldine Ferraro, we had Sarah Palin, you know a little bit about that. And we've got Kamala Harris. Neither of those previous tickets won. The question is whether third time's a charm. But to have a woman of color, to have a black woman in that job, it's just, I'm verklempt.
Look, I don't ever pretend to take myself out of the stories because I've lived these. As you said, I lived through Sarah Palin. I sat right to the right of the stage. I shoved her out on the stage. I was the last person to talk to her before she went out there. So I do have this like overly empathetic, overly engaged feeling when I watch this. But reading the excerpts that we have, especially from President Obama, it's not just what they say, it's how they say it. I think that what this convention has turned into is vote, our lives depend on it. And I think if you look at what's going to happen, it's the history that Senator Harris is making, and I think it's easier being formally from the other party to have always seen her as one of the most talented people that was in the field when there were however many there were, 17, though you had one every night. So it was like, oh, Harris night. And maybe this is because I've never sort of had to ride the waves and the policy debates within the Democratic Party. I could just examine them with a little bit of emotional distance. And she was, to me, always, back to last May, June, when there were that many Democrats, the most sort of talented political athlete on the field. So to see her arrive here tonight is, to me, quite logical. And it says something really good about Joe Biden kind of getting beyond the attacks that I think were deeply hurtful to him, launched by her, most effectively by her, because she's good at it. But what I've seen from President Obama's speech, I mean, these will be these really powerful bookends to what we've heard all week. Vote like the country's future depends on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm in a different place, as you said, because I'm a lifelong Democrat. I worked on a couple of presidential campaigns. I did drop the mic after my tiny role in the Obama campaign of 08. It was like, I will never go near another campaign. This is it. I'm retiring. But so as a political operative, I do look at it, a former political operative, I could look at it from that standpoint. But for me, it's all personal. I mean, this is a huge accomplishment for this country. I mean, think about the fact that this entire convention thus far, I think, is such an affirmation of what America can be and what it has become and the distance we've come. We're in the 400-year, commemoration of the 1619 arrival of enslaved people, 16 enslaved people from Africa in this country. And look at what we've done. We elected a black man as president who then puts an older white man from, I think he's not even, is he greatest generation? I mean, he's from, I think, the silent generation, right?
He's born in 1942, so he's a white baby. He's pre-boomer.
He's pre-boomer. And he picks this pre-boomer man who says, I'm going to go ahead and be second to this black guy. And then that guy turns around and picks the first woman who's not just the first black woman, but the first Asian American woman, and who's also got that Caribbean root, which I share, so I'm extremely proud, and all of our Caribbean folks are extremely proud of that. She's got the little Jamaican in there. And, the fact that we could do that and that assembled at this convention was, American Samoa got to show out, and all of our, Kansas was also equally showing out, and we saw everything from the cornfields out west to Maryland, where we're like Harriet Tubman, that is actually the potential America has always had. And they didn't intend to have it. The men who formed this country had no intention of even making their wives a little more than property. Like, they were fine with their own wives being basically property. And they accidentally created a country that can have this convention. I'm proud of this country because of what I'm seeing. Forget the partisan part of it. Forget being a Democrat, Republican. It doesn't matter. I think anyone who cares about America and who loves this country should feel extremely proud of the vision that we've seen of what America has the potential to be if we let it.
And let me just slide back into political strategist role. That's exactly what they needed everyone to see this week.
That's right.
That's where they get their bump. When you talk about convention,
to include community care, to include an abolitionist future. And I'm talking about like for real abolition, not just watered down DNC version of abolition. We're talking about abolishing the police. We're talking about abolishing ICE. We're talking about abolishing prisons.
Yeah, we're talking about abolishing the police, abolishing ICE, abolishing all prisons. We're imagining a world like that. We're bringing it to you. You're starting to get some sense why they're not putting this stuff on TV. Democrats and their faithful lackeys in the media have been telling you for weeks that none of this is real. You're imagining it. Democrats don't really want to take the cops away and leave you defenseless. Yes, they are voting to take billions from police departments across the country. But that's not really defunding. It's redistributing. Not a big deal. Calm down. But now, J. Mai shows up and lets an entire animal shelter of cats out of the DNC's bag and lets you know that, yes, all your fears are true. We're doing exactly what you think we're doing. The gender-transcendent mermaid queen kings are here, and it's a whole new deal now. Get psyched. And be sure to warn your daughters. No more field hockey scholarships to Bowdoin for them. No, there are boys on the field. Democrats want biological men to compete with girls in sports. Most parents of girls think that's nuts because it is, and terrible for girls because, obviously. But at the Democratic National Convention, it's not even a question. It's just business as usual. Watch transgender person Marissa Richmond explain.
We're going to have a panel looking at trans youth issues. We've been watching state legislatures, especially here in the South, targeting trans youth for trying to deny them access to health care, education, and even access to the right to play sports, although needless to say, the mishandling of the coronavirus by the current administration is affecting a lot of people's ability to play sports. But they've been particularly transphobic in school.
Okay, so no more field hockey scholarships, and I'm sorry, your daughters are not going to make the soccer team. That's bad news. Most people could live with it if they had to. But once again, it's just the beginning. What if they abolished capitalism too? Would you like some red lines to go with that? How about some humiliation on the side? It's all in the menu. Listen to aspiring economist Ashley Nicole McRae.
This future that we all want, that we're all trying to build, really is about the destruction of colonization, white supremacy, and capitalism.
The destruction of colonization, white supremacy, and capitalism. What does that mean exactly? We're not sure. We're not delegates to the DNC. But we're pretty certain it's going to be bad news for you. But not the end of the bad news. No, there's more. Elizabeth Warren showed up to speak at the Native American caucus on Tuesday. Seems pretty likely she's come to steal your horses.
Join us in fighting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and in supporting the Democrats so that we can all continue our work for Indian country.
It's just so great. Our work for Indian country. We kept waiting for Ralph Northam to show up at the DNC's African American panel wearing a hood. Maybe that's tomorrow. People online did love the Warren panel, by the way. Loved it. In fact, it probably would have outrated the Yo-Yo Brothers from the Philippines if they'd aired it at night. People at home flooded the DNC with suggestions for Chief Warren. Here's one. If Elizabeth Warren can speak at a Native American event, maybe Milli Vanilli can host the Grammy Awards. That's not a bad idea, actually. But it hurt Elizabeth Warren's feelings, so the DNC shut down the chat room. What a shame. It bears repeating, by the way, that not all of this insanity was confined just to the daytime. Some of it bled into primetime as well. Sandy Cortez showed up to promise health care, college education, higher wages to illegal aliens. She did all of that in a 90-second speech. Pretty impressive. It was like a socialist Mad Libs competition. Here's part of it.
Thank you to everyone here today endeavoring towards a better, more just future for our country and our world. In fidelity and gratitude to a mass people's movement working to establish 21st century social, economic, and human rights, including guaranteed health care, higher education, living wages, and labor rights for all people in the United States. I hereby second the nomination of Senator Bernard Sanders of Vermont for President of the United States of America.
Let's put her in charge. Ooh, that's a good idea. Whoa. We should note that crazy as all of this was, and it was, none of it was too crazy for Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. Sandy Cortez called for giving government health insurance to foreign nationals, tens of millions of them. Jay Mai imagined a world without cops or prisons. Some lunatic in a clerical collar showed up and said Republicans are going to hell. Harris and Biden nodded along. It all seemed normal to them, because it is. Brett Baer is the host
for all of us. And, you know,
since you are a newsman but also a TV man, veteran, the ratings last night, they don't tell the whole story, but they are kind of revealing. If your convention loses to America's Got Talent, no criticism of that show, but does it make you pause and wonder, like, does this have implications?
Well, I think so. I mean, the ratings are down, and this is a different year, obviously, but they're down about 40 to 50% in the network coverage. Overall, you know, you're roughly around 30%. The campaign says, the Biden campaign says they're seeing streaming numbers going up, but we haven't really seen all of that data. You know, you were talking about what goes on air, and it's very scripted. So far, it's been a lot about moderates, Republicans endorsing Joe Biden, how it's reaching across the aisle. But during the day, you're right to point out, there are a lot of things that happen. These caucus meetings, these delegate assembly meetings, and they're not on air, but they're online, and you can see them. And there are quite interesting things being said in all these meetings.
You can see them, you can't unsee them, which is part of the problem. I'm wondering, why are they streaming this stuff out to the public? I mean, clearly, they chose Biden in part because they wanted a moderate face on the party, but if you've got people calling for an end to capitalism, that doesn't suggest moderation. So why are they putting this out there?
Most people won't see that. I mean, your producers will dig it up and show it, but most people won't be streaming that. The numbers won't be that big across the country. It's part of the deal to reach out to the different groups. This is the Democratic Party platform. It is 92 pages long. You mentioned Governor Cuomo. His father, Mario Cuomo, former New York governor, said, "You campaign in poetry, but you govern in prose." Translate that to mean you can put whatever you want in this platform. It's symbolic, but when you get into governing, it's a whole different thing. The question this time is, if Democrats do get into power, how much push will there be from the left side of their party to govern in the poetry of what they're talking about in the caucus meetings and the assembly meetings?
It's impossible to know, but my sense is quite a vigorous push.
Val Demings, again, all these women have since publicly expressed support on Joe Biden's decision to choose Harris. And, you know, as Kamala Harris makes history tonight as the first woman of color to be nominated by a major political party for the vice presidency, it is not a coincidence that this evening is going to feature some key high-profile Democratic women, and we do expect that gender is going to be a key theme tonight as well. And now, as a mark of the historic nature of Kamala Harris's candidacy, we are learning also that she is going to be introduced by 3 women who are very personally close to her sister, her niece, and her stepdaughter. But just in a final reminder of how unusual all of this is this week, they are all going to be appearing virtually instead of in person. Wolf?
Certainly is an unconventional convention. All right, MJ, thank you very much. As the Biden-Harris ticket is being launched at this convention, let's take a closer look now at their potential path to victory. John King is over at the Magic Wall. John?
The one thing that is still the same, Wolf, is you pick a president even in the middle of a pandemic, state by state. So let's look at the map and look at the path to victory. On the one hand, Joe Biden right now has an advantage. That's why the back half of this Democratic convention is so important for the Democrats, trying to solidify what right now is an early Biden advantage in the Electoral College map. If you look at this map, dark blue, solid Democrat, light blue, leans Democrat. Dark red, solid Trump, light red, leans Trump. Joe Biden right now, if you add all up the blue here, is 269 electoral votes, just one away from winning the presidency. We have him right now leaning in Pennsylvania, leans his way. Michigan leans his way. Remember, that's 2 of the blue wall states that Donald Trump flipped from blue to red. Wisconsin is the 3rd. If Joe Biden could keep this map as it is and just win Wisconsin, he's the next president of the United States. Now, that's still a long ways off, almost 11 weeks off. The most fascinating dynamic, one of the most anyway, is that in this race, the president has lost his calling card. President Trump, we all thought all year this would be a tough race, but he had the unemployment rate, the economy on his side. This is February. Look at all these states below 3%, single-digit unemployment. The national unemployment rate back in February, 3.5%. Then, of course, the punch of the coronavirus pandemic. You began to see it in March, West Virginia, Louisiana, and out in the Southwest. But then, bam, April came. Look at this. Just look at this map and study this map. Plus 20% unemployment in Michigan, 20% plus out in Nevada. You see right here, Pennsylvania, again, that Trump won last time. Ohio, Wisconsin, Arizona, everywhere. But look at these the key battleground states where you have either 15 to 20% unemployment or 9 to 12% unemployment, double-digit unemployment everywhere. So the president needs this to improve. The problem is April, then you go into May, stayed pretty much the same. Still devastation. Tens of millions of jobs wiped off the map. If you look at June, this is the latest month we have the state-by-state unemployment. We'll get new data before the Republican convention. A bit of an improvement here, but still look at all the pain on this map. There are still 10 million jobs essentially missing, wiped out. Even though some jobs have come back, we're still 10 million more than that shy of where we were at the beginning of the pandemic. This is the biggest problem for the president because pain everywhere in America, but pain in the states that will decide the next president, the battleground states, Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, out in the West right there. So Anderson, when you look at this map now, it tilts in favor of Joe Biden, and the one thing we thought would always help President Trump, the economy, he can no longer count on.
Yeah. John, thank you. I want to dive back into tonight's speech by former President Barack Obama with our political commentators. Here's another excerpt from the former president's speech. Quote, Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't, and the consequences of that failure are severe. 170,000 Americans dead, millions of jobs gone. Our worst impulses unleashed, our proud reputation around the world badly diminished, and our democratic institutions threatened like never before. Governor Granholm, again, I mean, I don't know of any former president giving a speech like this about a sitting president.
I think because the circumstances are so dire. You know, tonight's theme is called A More Perfect Union. You might remember that in 2008, Obama gave an incredible speech called A More Perfect Union. He gave it in Philadelphia. It was about race. Tonight, he's going to be in Philadelphia giving this speech, and he's going to be at the Museum of the American Revolution. And I think he chose that because he is fundamentally, as one legal scholar told me, Trump is the most unpatriotic president we have ever seen, because exactly what you just read, he has dismantled the institutions of the Constitution, which we hold, which make this country special, including things like the right to vote. So I am really hoping that President Obama does come out and punches hard on behalf of our nation and the Constitution.
Scott Jennings, do you think this actually gets any votes? I mean, does this work to bring people to the ballot box?
I mean, my assumption is it'll work on Democrats. I was noting that tonight's roster, President Obama included, notes the end of the outreach to the disaffected Republicans. It lasted all of 48 hours. They're now rolling out all the people that would remind Republicans why they should not vote for the Biden-Harris ticket. I think on the Obama excerpts that we've seen, I think it really does illustrate, Anderson, the two strategies of the parties. The Democrats need this to be a referendum on Trump, and what you'll see next week from the Republicans is to try to make it a choice between Trump and Biden. And so you see, I think President Obama tonight, you know, trying to make the case against Trump as they see it. I think this convention's been light on policy so far, and that's for a reason, because they just want everybody to go out and vote as it's an up or down on Trump, and you're going to see a much different kind of thing from the Republicans next week.
Dan?
Look, I think this is going to be an extraordinary moment. And a lot of Democrats are going to be happy to see Barack Obama take the gloves off and go. I just want to remind people, though, that there's a heartbreak moment here as well. Barack Obama never wanted to give a speech like this. He is a traditionalist. He's a constitutionalist. He was perfectly prepared to concede and to go off and to just be above politics. He has been drug into this by what he sees as just a complete collapse of leadership in this country. And so people can be happy that he's taking the gloves off. He's not the kind of guy that wants to do this. So when you hear him do it, somebody else may, hey, you could just write it off. When you hear someone like him, who is such a traditionalist, decide to go against type, to go against the tradition, and to speak, you can listen to his words very carefully. He is speaking from his heart. He's not playing politics. He really believes that democracy is in peril. And I just think I don't want to be one of these Democrats jumping up and down saying go, 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 because I know the heartbreak underneath this decision that he's made.
Although I would say that it may be heartbreaking, but it's also so important. I mean, I think you're totally right, Van, but it underscores the importance of what he is saying, that he is forced to come out and basically, open kimono about what is happening, people. And I think also it's not just going to be negative Trump. He is going to lift up Barack Obama. He was side by side with him. I think the lead-in to his speech, the lead-in to the speech will be a montage which shows him giving the Medal of Honor to Joe Biden. So I think he's going to do both things. He is going to make sure people understand who Joe Biden is, but he is also going to tell the truth, which is so important.
Scott, I want to hear from you.
Republicans Republicans just don't see Barack Obama as a reluctant partisan. I mean, from a Republican point of view, you look at what George W. Bush did after he left office. He left Barack Obama alone. Republicans would have loved George W. Bush to criticize Obama. He never did it. Jimmy Carter has not been someone that's criticized people. But Barack Obama has been pretty partisan since he left the White House. He did not like it that Trump followed him. I totally understand why. But he campaigned in the midterms. He has criticized Trump all the way through. He really has.
Listen, you've had presidents go out there and stick up for their own party. But he held himself way back. In fact, the party's been frustrated with him for not coming out. He's coming out now because he feels like he has to. You can take him more seriously because he's reluctant to do it.
All right. Historic night Democratic convention with Kamala Harris set to accept the vice presidential nomination. We'll talk to her lifelong friend about it.
County. Joe Biden started his political career as a Newcastle County councilman.
The 20-something councilman soon had 3 small children. He also had growing ambition. And in 1972, Biden ran for U.S. Senate, an utter long shot.
Let's take a look now at some of the very close Senate races. Delaware is the first state. J. Caleb Boggs, who is the incumbent Republican, being challenged by Joseph Biden.
By just 3,000 votes in the end, he won. Biden was an instant national headline. Days after the election, he turned 30 and celebrated with his wife. But 1 month after that, tragedy. A car crash took the lives of wife Nelia and their 1-year-old daughter Naomi. Their sons Hunter and Bo were injured, and Biden, who initially considered resigning, was sworn into the Senate from beside Bo's hospital bed.
So help you God.
I do.
Congratulations, Senator. Thank you.
If in 6 months or so there's a conflict between my being a good father and being a good senator, which I hope will not occur, we can always get another senator, but they can't get another father.
Terrible tragedy.
Nina Totenberg is the justice correspondent for National Public Radio.
I have a dim recollection of him being sort of a zombie for a little while, just sort of walking through the steps that you take to survive.
Biden commuted on Amtrak some 4 hours a day to be home with his kids at night.
Joe Biden was a complete newbie. He was close to college age. And the people who really had power in the Senate in those days were the Dixiecrats, the old bulls. And he quickly discovered, I think, that if you wanted to get anything done, you had to go through them, and was very effective at it.
Things started moving quickly. In 1975, Biden was placed on the powerful Foreign Relations Committee, and a few years later, on the Judiciary Committee. He met teacher Jill Tracy Jacobs, and despite some proposal rejections, they married 2 years later, with the blessing of young Hunter and Bo.
I'm ashamed of the lack of moral backbone to this policy.
Still commuting to Washington by train, in the 1980s, Biden's life and profile grew. Daughter Ashley was born, and 1987 marked his first campaign for president.
It is the obligation of this generation to care for and protect the future of our children.
Almost immediately, Biden ran into trouble. He had taken to quoting a British Labour Party leader in his speeches. But at an August debate in Iowa, Biden did not attribute the following quote.
Why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family ever to go to a university? Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Back on Capitol Hill, Biden faced questions about the alleged plagiarism.
I saw that there was a connect. I mean, I could tell how that man felt.
Within 1 week, he would drop out of the race, just as he faced another test.
There will be other opportunities for me to campaign for president, but there will not be many other opportunities for me to influence President Reagan's choice on the Supreme Court.
Biden, now chairman of the Judiciary Committee, oversaw the confirmation hearing of Judge Robert H. Bork to the Supreme Court. It was sharp from the beginning.
Having watched the Senate Judiciary Committee over the years, this is the one time where senators who were on offense actually were prepared. They asked good questions, they knew a lot about Bork, and Joe Biden led the charge.
Bork failed his confirmation vote.
The nomination is not confirmed.
Just a few months later, in 1988, a health crisis. Biden suffered 2 life-threatening aneurysms. A full 7 months of recovery later, he returned to the Senate floor.
I will not forget the sentiments expressed, the support given. It means a lot. Thank you very much.
Biden got back to work, and as the 90s opened, a new test, the nomination of Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court.
Clarence Thomas, seasoned now by more experience on the bench, fits my description of the best man at the right time.
Anybody run?
Biden was still Judiciary Chairman. The committee learned about charges of sexual harassment against Thomas from his former assistant, Anita Hill.
You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Other women came forward to testify, but Biden agreed with Republicans to limit the testimony to Hill alone. The televised hearings gripped the nation.
His conversations were very vivid. He spoke about acts that he had seen in pornographic films involving such matters as women having sex with animals and films showing group sex or rape scenes.
It would all make a searing impression on some women watching, like Amy Allison, the founder of the pro-women group She the People.
I was an undergraduate, and I went to the common room in our dorm to watch the hearings. I saw the way that she was being treated by the white men on the Senate Judiciary Committee, both Democrat and Republican. Joe Biden was among them.
Biden stressed he would run a fair hearing.
I have not made my judgment based upon this proceeding because we have not heard all the evidence.
But his handling of it and the fact that other corroborating witnesses were never called has raised sharp scrutiny.
Just as the Republicans were really unprepared for the Bork hearings, the Democrats were unprepared for the fury and the determination of the Republicans, and that they would use any tactic to destroy the main witness against Thomas. Biden thought, my job is to be fair, but his fairness in the end was in many ways unfair to Anita Hill.
This entire proceeding is ended.
Biden spoke about the hearings last year.
As the committee chairman, I take responsibility that she did not get treated well. I take responsibility for that.
Later, Biden used the Judiciary Chairmanship for big policy pushes, including in 1994, the Violence Against Women Act, which created a national strategy for combating and prosecuting domestic abuse and sexual violence against women. He also led on a more controversial bill that was attached, the 1994 crime bill that imposed longer sentences for drug crimes and other offenses.
It may have seemed and did seem entirely reasonable in the middle of a crime epidemic. But in hindsight, it resulted in locking up a generation of black and brown and poor white people.
The gathering threat of your...
As the new century opened, with George W. Bush elected twice, Biden again thought it was his time. And he started dropping hints that he wanted another shot at the White House himself. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Lisa Desjardins.
And we will have part 2 of the Biden biography tomorrow night on our special coverage. And now we want to bring in some other voice.
Anytime. Parts, more brands. It's so easy to find the right parts.
We can do big changes as vice president, but she is actually a very personable person. Like, she actually, if you just meet her, is just nice. Yeah. And she has that nice factor that's similar to what you saw with Jill Biden. So I think even as she delivers a very tough message, what I've seen come through whenever she speaks, and just when I talk to her, when you just meet her, is that she does it in a way that's actually really nice. Mm-hmm. You know? So she's tough. She's nice.
I think it is one thing that I want to look at, though, thinking about the way this is going to culminate tonight, is with the Obama speech, which I think you're right is going to go big. And it's a live speech. She's from Museum of the American Revolution in Philadelphia, which itself says something in terms of what the stakes are here. And then we're going to have Senator Harris, and that putting them next to each other is itself a kind of statement. I want to play a little bit of sound just as a reminder about President Obama at Democratic National Conventions. The first time a lot of Americans, the first time the great majority of Americans ever had an inkling of his existence was what he did to basically end the Democratic National Convention in 2004, much to the detriment of everybody who thought they were the big deal at that convention. Yeah. No, it was this guy.
If there's a child on the south side of Chicago who can't read, that matters to me even if it's not my child. If there's a senior citizen somewhere who can't pay for their prescription drugs and having to choose between medicine and the rent, that makes my life poorer even if it's not my grandparent. If there's an Arab American family being rounded up without benefit of an attorney or due process, that threatens my civil liberties.
Do you remember what Oprah said after that? He's the one. That was it. She, and like poor John Kerry was like, but I'm the one.
Wait. This is supposed to be... Barack Obama was a state senator.
Yeah.
Running for the United States Senate in 2004 when he gave that keynote. He was a state senator. I remember I was at the time hosting a talk radio show on Air America with Chuck Neal, Obama and Liz Winstead from the Daily Show. And we all came in the next day and were like, we can't play any of it.
Yeah.
Because like none of us, we're all softies. None of us could play like even a couple lines about it without just sitting there and being like, yeah, man. Yeah, who is this guy again? Yeah. I mean, it slayed you.
Yeah. Can I just tell you,
look at how it endured. I mean, I mean, he could re-rack that speech
and just play that
and give it tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the brilliance of him as a speechwriter sometimes gets eclipsed by how starved everyone is for all of the presidents that came before this one.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, and I just in the excerpts from what he's going to say tonight. With Obama, it is always the architecture of the actual speech, the delivery, as you said, the venue. I mean, this is just layer upon layer of message designed to, I think, set her up for success, because I think he's invested in Senator Harris's success as well. But really, I think this is a fight for his legacy. I think he sees a re-election of Donald Trump the same way most people I talk to in national security circles see it. We could maybe eke by one term of Trump, but at the end of a second term, we won't be the country that we think we are. You'll pass a point of no return. So there is something even more desperate, even more personal, I think, that we can expect to hear from Obama tonight.
Well, let's watch. One other thing I want to show you guys is we 2004 is the first time he ever speaks at the DNC. 4 years later, he's back as the party's presidential nominee. He goes from state senator at one convention to presidential nominee at the next. But then, of course, we get a lot of President Obama at every Democratic national convention thereafter, and he always makes the most of it. Watch.
To the next Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, I thank you. 4 years ago, I promised to end the war in Iraq. We did. Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat, and Osama bin Laden is dead. The Donald is not really a plans guy. The choice isn't even close. America is already great. America is already strong.
Barack Obama at DNC's past tonight. He will deliver his speech about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris live from Philadelphia's Museum of the American Revolution. Joining us now is our beloved colleague, Chris Hayes, who has a guest for us who knows President Obama pretty well, and I've heard a rumor may have had something to do with tonight's speech. Hi, Chris.
That's the same rumor I've heard. Great to see you, Rachel. Yes, David Plouffe is a guy who's been part of winning campaigns with Joe Biden specifically for years now. In 2008, he was Barack Obama's campaign manager, continued to work for Obama until his re-election and inauguration in 2013. We're told he worked with President Obama on the speech he will deliver tonight, which has to be one of the President Obama's most anticipated ever. And joining me now is David Plouffe. I want to start with President Obama's perception of the rhetorical boundaries are as an ex-president talking about a sitting president, because we all know Barack Obama is an institutionalist, that certain kinds of norms of democratic civility matter to him a tremendous amount. How is he thinking about that? How do you assess that in this particular perilous moment?
Right. Well, Chris, and let's not overstate my involvement in this speech. You know, it's like the Eagles Road. You can check it anytime you want, but you can never leave. So I've certainly spoken to him about the speech and seen it and offered whatever meaningless thoughts I have. But I think what he's going to say tonight is he's going to make a powerful case on behalf of Joe Biden, a powerful case against Donald Trump, and I'll get back to your question in a minute, and a powerful case in support of our democracy and how threatened it is. And so I think if you look at his speech in Philadelphia in 16, so 2 successive conventions in a row with speeches in Philadelphia, we just saw some clips from that. Very good speech, great case for Hillary Clinton. But you see Michelle Obama's speech, Bernie Sanders' speech, Barack Obama's speech tonight. There is a sense of urgency and ferocity and stakes raising that has to happen here. So I think his view, Michelle Obama's view on Monday, is the difference between 4 years of Donald Trump, we're barely going to survive it. We may not survive 8 years. And so, you have to make a case to people about how important this election is. And I think just as Michelle Obama did on Monday, Barack Obama will tonight, I assume Joe Biden will tomorrow night, also make a case of the individual responsibility of everybody who doesn't want to see Donald Trump elected. You have to vote. You've got to ask for your absentee ballot today. You've got to talk to everybody you know in your life about it. Like, we got to be all over this. And so that's where I think the boundaries have shifted. I think the threat to the entire enterprise, to democracy, to the world is so severe that Barack Obama and I think others are willing to go places maybe they wouldn't have gone in the past.
Let's see, we'll tell you. America hasn't gotten into any big wars in a while. In fact, this administration is the first in more than 40 years not to get us into a new war. But there's a big effort underway to change that. More war. We'll tell you who's doing it. We'll be right back.
Presidential candidates generally are, because he could not be. And the other thing I think is
Well, we don't have the after parties and that feeling of camaraderie, but it has allowed Americans to see the story of Joe Biden, the story that we're about to hear of Kamala Harris in a different way. And one of my favorite moments was actually the roll call last night, where you had everything from heartfelt thoughts from people who had lost their child to gun violence, to our favorite duo trying to sell calamari from Rhode Island. And I just thought it was the America as we know it, as opposed to the America that Donald Trump keeps trying to talk about. And it is an America where people are different, but they don't want to be divided. They want to come together. And you certainly saw that in seeing Colin Powell and hearing from Governor Kasich the night before. There are so many Republicans, and I don't think it should be lost here, moderate Republicans who have come forward. So when we talk about unity, it's Bernie Sanders' heartfelt pitch to bring his supporters with him, but it is also all of these Republicans who have come forward and courageously, Cindy McCain narrating the video last night, who are speaking out.
There are some, I've heard some discussion that there's an awful lot of focus on the personal, not enough on substance. How do you see that?
You know what? I see the personal as the woman from Arizona who said that her dad's only pre-existing condition was trusting Donald Trump, and he paid with his life. Yeah, that's personal, but this is a personal election, Judy. People are isolated. I had to see my dad with COVID through a window in a nursing home, not knowing if it was the last time I'd see him, and he made it through. There's stories like that all over our land, and it's a really personal moment. And so that's why I think Joe Biden's ability to relate to people, from being nominated by the woman on the elevator to his competence, as some of your last panelists were talking about, the competence that he brings to the job. And I personally am really excited about Kamala tonight. We grew closer on the campaign trail. I just texted her husband, jokingly asking him what he was wearing tonight, since that's what you asked the spouse. I won't reveal.
Yeah, okay, you're not going to tell us.
And I am just...
We don't ask those questions, by the way, Senator Klobuchar, but others may.
No, it's because they always ask the woman what they're wearing, the spouse. Anyway, so the point is that this is going to be a moment where every little girl and boy in America, especially in our African-American community, Indian American community, is going to know that anything and everything is possible.
Well, speaking of COVID, we know that your own husband, John, went through the experience of the coronavirus, and you were in the hospital when you had to be in Washington, and we know that was a tough time. We're glad he recovered. I want to ask you about Minnesota. 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton won, but it was, what, by the narrowest of margins. You said out on the campaign trail that you, Amy Klobuchar, if you were the party's nominee, you could keep Minnesota blue. But my question to you is, what happens now? I mean, the polls are close. There was one that came out a few days ago, the Emerson poll, I think, 3 points up, just 3 points up for Joe Biden. Is Minnesota in play this year?
Joe Biden's going to win Minnesota, and I'm going to do everything to make sure he does, and not to mention that, helping in Wisconsin and Iowa and across the country. As I said in my campaign, we're going to build a blue wall of Democratic votes around these states, and we're going to make Donald Trump pay for it. And a lot of what we've seen is this incredible momentum. And Minnesota, I think that was one poll. There have been others showing him much more ahead. They're going to vote for him. They like him here. He's been up in northern Minnesota a number of times. He's come to our state over and over and over because we like Joe Biden. So I just want to make sure we win big, not just in my state, but across the country. As you know, he's trying as much as he can to limit votes and to stop people from voting and scare them about voting by mail.
You mean the president?
Right. Yes, the president. And he's doing that to stop people, and I don't think they're listening. They're showing up in record numbers by mail and in person, and they're going to do that. So we expect this in every single state, and the key is this week is our week to show the country what we're all about. Not only why people shouldn't vote for Donald Trump, but why they should vote for Joe Biden.
But in just less than a minute, how worried are you about having an effective campaign when your candidate can't get out on the trail, can't go out and connect with people, can't shake their hands, look them in the eye?
And he's someone that loves doing that. We know that. So it's especially hard on Joe Biden. But the truth is, we're in a pandemic. Everyone has to be safe. And that's why I think some of the things that we've seen, that incredible video with Barack Obama and Joe Biden, the way that people have come forward and been able to participate in this convention like they couldn't do if they, because they wouldn't have flown out there. I think it's an example of the new kind of campaigning we're going to see. And again, it has not suppressed turnout in the Democratic primaries. It's been at all-time highs. People know what the stakes are. To end with Michelle Obama, what she said is, vote like your life depends on it, because it does.
Barack Obama, that bothered him a lot. Not just the black community, obviously, the election of Trump. But that's a big thing that I'm going to be looking for tonight, Dana. Well, how is he going to respond to the fact that Donald Trump's election is in many ways a rebuke of him?
That's true. Speaking of a rebuke of somebody, Hillary Clinton. This is going to be so fascinating to watch, because if you think about her career in politics, she started out coming to these events speaking as a candidate's wife. Then she was the first lady. Then she was the runner-up for the Democratic nomination. Then she was the first female nominee. And this time, she's going to speak as a cautionary tale to remind people, if you don't get out and vote, even if you think that you got it in the bag, you don't. I'm not president right now, Abby.
Yeah, and Hillary Clinton is also someone who knows about something the Harris team is watching carefully, which is the sexist attacks that they're expecting to come at her after this moment. And I think tonight they're really looking at this as her really critical opportunity to reintroduce herself. I talked to someone really close to her this week who said, you know, this is about her unique American story, but she wants to show folks that she's a fighter.
All right, Abby, hold on, because the third night of the Democratic convention starts right in the
fallout from that snub, plus 8 years of small subs. You have.
Mom? You got this. So you can really promise better sleep. Not promise, prove. And now all beds are on sale. Say.
Party that fired me up as a young man in the 60s, registering voters with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the Mississippi Delta and campaigning for Miss Fannie Lou Hamer for the United States House of Representatives. It's the party that taught me that public servants should serve the public, even when your opponents call you names like nasty or slow. And today, it's the party that calls us to stand up for what and to get in good trouble. So on behalf of this great party, it's my pleasure to welcome once again delegates, alternates, standing committee members, friends, and fellow Americans, members of the media and guests from around the world. I now call this third session of the 48th Quadrennial National Convention of the Democratic Party to order. Now let's get this show started.
And now, live from Wisconsin, please welcome Governor Tony Evers.
Good evening, folks. I'm Tony Evers, and I'm incredibly proud to be the 46th governor of the great state of Wisconsin. We were really looking forward to having you here in America's Dairyland. Unfortunately, the pandemic means we can't do that this year. But what unites us is far, far greater than what divides us. So even though we can't be with each other, I know we have a shared sense of purpose. That is to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. This November is about returning kindness, respect, empathy, and civility back to the White House. And that's who Joe and Kamala are, because they know, especially during challenging times like these, the problems we face can only be solved by all of us together. Holy mackerel, folks. Let's get to work.
You in just 1 minute. Stay with us.
Thank you for supporting SDPB. You make our work possible.
Because of you, our SDPB team asks the questions you want asked.
Because of you, the tradition of great music continues.
Because of you, SDPB is independent and adheres to the highest standards of journalism.
Because of you, we bring light to the day's news without the heat.
Because of you, SDPB produces award-winning local stories.
Because of you, SDPB remains strong for you, your friends, and your neighbors.
Because of you, we provide educational materials to families and teachers.
Because of you, we have an extensive library of on-demand programs for you to enjoy.
Thank you for donating to SDPB. We do it for you because of you.
That's been hollowed out. Absolutely sure he's going to help us bring this country together once again.
So many times that made us
to do. We will actually vet the most liberal senator in 2019. Wasn't Bolshevik Bernie. It was Kamala Harris. And we'll get to all of that. Are we ready? Okay. What's happened? Well, apparently she's live. Let's
well, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey everybody, it's me, Kamala. So before I go on stage later tonight, I want to talk about the importance of voting. I know many of you plan to vote this year, but amidst the excitement and enthusiasm for this election, you've also heard about obstacles and misinformation and folks making it harder for you to cast your ballot. So I think we need to ask ourselves, why don't they want us to vote? Why is there so much effort to silence our voices? And the answer is because when we vote, things change. When we vote, things get better. When we vote, we address the need for all people to be treated with dignity and respect in our country. So each of us needs a plan, a voting plan. Joe and I want to make sure you're prepared. If you text VOTE to 30330, we'll help you come up with your plan and remember deadlines and get ready to vote in your community. So send that text and encourage your family and friends to send one too. Now let's enjoy another night of inspiration from around our country. I'll see you a little later tonight, and until then, I turn it over to my dear friend and tonight's moderator, Kerry Washington.
Welcome to night 3 of the Democratic National Convention. I am honored to be joining you as we continue to celebrate this unconventional convention.
Kamala Harris is a radical, far-left political opportunist, doesn't even like her own running mate. Remember, she accused Joe Biden of racism and sexism on multiple occasions. She said that she believes Joe Biden's accusers, and Harris accepted the role of Biden's running mate for one reason, and I assume she just wants to be president. She only had, what, 2%? And after all, according to a new poll, the majority of Americans and nearly half of all Democrats believe that Joe Biden will not be able to finish a 4-year term. Now, sadly,
For justice, equality, and truth that distinguishes us. We fight for a more perfect union because we are fighting for the soul of this country and for our lives. And right now, that fight is real. Tonight, we are going to hear from so many phenomenal women who are working to help us build that more perfect union. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Secretary Hillary Clinton, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. We're going to see an incredible performance from Jennifer Hudson and a world premiere performance from Billie Eilish. We'll meet so many of the activists and organizers working to build a more equal, more just future. And we're going to hear from our 44th president, Barack Obama. That's a long way of saying this is going to be an unforgettable night filled with important voices. But the most important voice we hope to hear from tonight is the one we need to hear from most. It's yours. Because if we are going to repair the damage that has been done, if we are going to finally realize the dream, we, the people, have to get involved. Each and every one of us is the we. You are the we. It's going to be your voice, your service, your action that helps us create that more perfect union. Tonight, we're going to talk about where we are and where we're going on so many issues important to our future. 90% of Americans support common sense gun laws because we need to do more to address the epidemic of gun violence. Let's start there.
People affected by everyday gun violence have to walk by the street corner where their best friend, their brother, their mother, their nephew, where they themselves were shot. And life goes on as if we all haven't just watched a loved one die and get put in the grave. The whole point of what I'm saying here is, until one of us or all of us stand up and say, I can't do this anymore, I can't sit by and watch the news treat these shootings like acts of God. Gun violence isn't just going to stop until there's a force fighting harder against it, and I'm going to do something to prevent it. They say that tougher gun laws do not decrease gun violence. We call BS! They say a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. We call BS! They say guns are just tools like knives. We call BS! They say that no laws could have been able to prevent the hundreds of senseless tragedies that have occurred. We call BS! That us kids don't know what we're talking about, that we're too young to understand how the government works. We call BS!
What we're fighting for will happen because we're fighting so strongly for it. We're going to make this change.
Long before this pandemic, our country has been suffering from the epidemic of gun violence.
Gun violence is a public health crisis, one that disproportionately affects the Black and brown communities. First, it was my beloved fiance.
My son Jerry at the Pulse shooting in Orlando.
7 years later, it would be my son.
I know exactly the pain, the toll, the heartbreak of gun violence.
My freshman year, my high school went into lockdown because a kid brought a gun to school.
We've had to endure live shooter training drills on our schools.
High schoolers have enough to deal with. They shouldn't also be responsible for keeping themselves safe at school. That's the job of the government.
We have to end corporate lobbying by the NRA. We have to invest in mental health in our communities rather than making our schools maximum security prisons.
I want a president who will make gun violence prevention a top priority, and I believe Joe Biden is that person.
And now, mother and activist, Deandra Dykes.
In a split second, a stray bullet shattered my family's life. My son DeAndre was only 13 years old. He was recognized as a gifted and talented student. His possibilities were endless. He was dancing at a birthday party when he was shot in the back left side of his head, shattering his skull. One shot changed our lives forever. Today, my Dre does not talk, he does not walk. I know he knows me by the smile he shows when I walk in his room, but I'm unsure if he knows a gunshot has changed his life. Since March, I've only been able to see my son 3 times, but I can't touch or hug him due to COVID-19. People tell me that I'm lucky. I tell them we are blessed. I remind them that my son is in a wheelchair and unable to feed himself. I don't think DeAndre feels lucky when he has to be bathed from head to toe or gets injections for muscle contractions. I am in a space of gratitude. Yes, I can touch DeAndre, I can hold his hand, but the child that I birthed is not able to live his dreams. And that hurts. Every day we're reminded that he may never be the same. We are not alone. In every town across America, there are families who know what a bullet can do. That's why I'm a mom who volunteers to stop this. President Trump, he doesn't care. He didn't care about the victims after Parkland, Las Vegas, or El Paso. I want a president who cares about our pain and grief. A president who will take on the gun lobby to ban assault weapons and close the loopholes to keep guns out of the hands of criminals. Joe Biden has taken on the NRA twice and won, and he will do it again as president.
I've looked in the eyes of too many parents, and I mean literally scores of them, who've lost their children to gun violence. And I mean literally scores of them who've lost their children to gun violence. And looked in the eyes of brave young people who survived school shootings. And I made each of them a promise, and made myself a promise. I promised them, and I promise all of you, I will make this promise today. Those families hurting across the country, I will never, 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 never give up this fight.
Out of pain, we choose to find meaning. A glimmer of light that lands on a promise. Former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, shot in the head from less than 3 feet away. But she survived. When tragedy strikes, we seek comfort in knowing we aren't alone.
Join us in this fight.
We seek strength to keep fighting, to keep moving forward. We turn to leaders who share our pain.
In the most difficult times, it's when we stand closest together. It's out of tragedy that we grow stronger.
He was there for me. He'll be there for you too.
We are a nation ready to end gun violence. A safer America is possible. But from this point forward, we must choose courage.
I've known the darkest of days. Days of pain and uncertain recovery. But confronted by despair, I've summoned hope. Confronted by paralysis and aphasia, I responded with grit and determination. I put one foot in front of the other. I found one word and then I found another. My recovery is a daily fight, but fighting makes me stronger. Words once came easily, today I struggle to speak. But I have not lost my voice. America needs all of us to speak out, even when you have to fight to find the words. We are at a crossroads. We can let the shooting continue, or we can act. We can protect our families, our future. We can vote. We can be on the right side of history. We must elect Joe Biden. He was there for me. He'll be there for you too. Join us in this fight. Vote, vote, vote. Thank you very much.
This guy had the aptitude to run government. She's going to be the one that's running government. I mean, come on, let's call a spade a spade.
Let's look at Kamala Harris. She has a more leftist socialist record in the U.S. Senate in 2019 than Bolshevik Bernie himself. No private health care. She feels that it's the right of a president to just bypass the legislative branch of government, take away people's Second Amendment rights by executive fiat. That's pretty radical. She will eliminate fracking. She sponsored the radical New Green Deal in the U.S. Senate. That's $94 trillion. I don't think you need to graduate from Harvard or MIT to figure out when you only take in 4.
And I said, Joe Biden's walking by. And she goes, oh my God, put him on. And I see his staffer going like, no, like, don't take the call. What are you doing? And he points to his staffer and he goes like, go that way. And he sent his staffer away.
How could I not be endeared to him instantly? He talked to me for the next half hour.
I see Dana Bash from CNN there. And she says, like, Senator Biden will be on in like 5. And he sends her away.
He asked me about my sons. He asked me about what I did. All I know is it was all about me, not about him.
And then he comes back to me then and he goes, it was lovely talking to your grandmother. And then he starts the interview with Dana Bash. It was unbelievable.
I must interject one thing. At the very end of his chat with me, he said, could you do me a favor? I said, sure, what is it? He said, tell me how I can get your grandson's hair. He was good-humored, he was sensitive, and here it is all these years later, and it's vivid in my mind.
You know, as much as I feel like I got to know him in that moment, it feels like he knows us. I know Joe because he listens. And whether he's heard your story or someone else's story, he cares about everyone's story.
He'll care more about you than he'll care about himself.
What a beautiful story. Okay, now let's talk about another important issue.
Very tough issue for a lot of people. People feel very strongly about it on both sides.
When it comes to buying a home, they say cash is king. But you're a queen, and that's just as powerful. You're armed with a verified approval from Rocket Mortgage.
Activists putting forward a plan to address climate change and create a clean energy economy.
There are battles that we need to fight and we need to win to secure our future in this country. But there's one issue that is an existential threat to all of us, and that is climate change.
The climate crisis is here, and we must act.
It is the most pressing issue of our time, and it deserves to be treated as such.
We no longer have any time to wait.
Our generation will bear the burden of past mistakes, but we stand to benefit most from changing course now.
We know that in a couple of years, it will be too late.
We need to change the paradigm, and that happens here with us.
We should invest massively in wind, solar, geothermal, and green infrastructure.
Moving away from fossil fuels and being highly competitive in renewables.
We need to lay out our specific policies
so that we can give our children, my children, your children, a planet that can sustain them.
That needs to happen now.
We need it now.
The moment demands it. We can afford nothing less.
Native American Roundtable at the DNC yesterday. I mean, these people are tone deaf, Sean. They really are to true America. They don't get this country. They don't get what America stands for, and that's
how we have punched above our weight in our successful response to COVID-19. I'm proud of New Mexicans from Taos to Truth or Consequences who have stepped up and sacrificed in so many incredible ways this past half year. And I'm proud how we embrace our multicultural identity as our greatest strength. And I'm proud that New Mexico has shown what climate leadership looks like. While the Trump administration has been eliminating environmental protections, we've expanded them. While they've been rolling back regulations on oil and gas, we've taken on polluters and held them accountable. We've committed to a renewable energy future with exciting and fulfilling careers for workers all across our beautiful state, including right here in the heart of northern New Mexico. We're laying a roadmap here for what America can and should look like in the 21st century. An America where we lead again, where we build safer, cleaner, and more affordable cities and communities, where we provide meaningful opportunities for workers and families to thrive and build better lives. As president, Joe Biden will rejoin the international climate agreement, and the United States will once again lead on this critical issue. At home, he'll invest in energy workers and he will deliver for working families across the U.S., helping them build meaningful careers while accelerating our nation and world into a clean, green 21st century and well beyond. We know time is running out to save our planet. We have the chance this November to end two existential crises: the Trump presidency and the environmental annihilation he represents. We have the chance this November to attack the climate crisis, invest in green 21st century jobs, and embrace the clean energy revolution our country, our young people are crying out for, and the leadership the rest of the world is waiting for. The choice is clear. The choice is Joe Biden. Thank you, America.
Hard work, rising to a challenge, the American way. Going to the moon was all three. Many astronauts returned home and reported a shift in their awareness. The view they saw of Earth from space was profound. The world looked beautiful, tiny, fragile. Our atmosphere is all that separates us from oblivion. We now call what they experienced the overview effect.
Here in Detroit, our communities for such a long time have faced the burden of pollution. And I think addressing climate change gives us an opportunity to correct some of these wrongs and to also invest in our vulnerable communities.
Maybe you've read some of the millions of pages of scientific evidence on climate change. Or maybe you felt it as you walked the neighborhood.
Oh my God, the truck is sinking.
For most people, it's overwhelming.
All of this with the global warming and that, and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax.
I had spent 5 years working on this report. The Trump administration started to remove any mention that humans were the cause of climate change from it.
I wrote my resignation letter just 6 months into the administration. They were handing the keys of public lands over to private interests. The Trump administration has gone all out, not just to neglect climate change issues and laws, but to reverse them.
We have about a decade before it's too late.
I'm a kid, and I'm going to say to all those adults who are watching this right now, why don't you get up and do something?
Some of the first climate change legislation ever written was by a senator from Delaware.
When Donald Trump thinks about climate change, the only word he can muster is hoax.
America faces a challenge, but if we face it together, we will rise to the occasion and build back better.
When I think about climate change, the word I think of is jobs.
That's Joe's plan. Create millions of new good-paying jobs, many of them union, like mine. Invest in critical infrastructure. Upgrade millions of buildings. Invest in micro-mobility and precision agriculture. a clean energy future that achieves net zero emissions by 2050. Because we can't power the economies of the future without investing in the technologies of the future.
I think what's really important about Joe Biden's plan is that 40% of the investment will go to vulnerable communities.
We know how to do this. We'll do it again, but this time bigger and faster and smarter.
Joe won't ignore the crisis. We're seeing what happens when we do that. He won't surrender to the fight. Joe's America will lead the world on clean energy. We'll lead on job creation. And America will lead the world again on climate.
I was 13 when the Camp Fire, the most destructive wildfire in California's history, broke out. We were visiting family nearly 100 miles away, but my asthma flared badly. I could hardly breathe. I'm Alexandra Vcr, and I've been organizing young people around climate change since 2018. Climate change is impacting us now, and it's robbing my generation of a future. For young people my age, every aspect of our lives, from where we go to school, to what kind of careers we'll have, to whether or not we can raise a family, depends on us taking climate change seriously right now. Joe Biden won't solve this crisis in 4 years. No one can. But he will put us back on track so that my generation can have a fighting chance. I'm asking you to join us. Don't let our futures go up in flames.
The corn growers near my by the 4th of July. These days they're lucky if the corn is even planted because of unpredictable and torrential spring rains. I'm Andrew Adamski. I studied microbial ecology at Northern Michigan University. Us farmers can see the effects of climate change happening right in front of us. So we've been trying to do our part. We're adopting sustainable solutions on my family's farm, switching to a community model, using less land, and reusing our resources to grow our food. We are eliminating tons of carbon pollution every year by mimicking natural ecosystems. Farmers can be part of the climate solution instead of a problem. Today, we all can grow our own future, but we need our leaders to be part of the solution as well, instead of part of the problem. We need them to commit to the science, not ignore it. We need them to put real plans on the table rather than roll them back. That's what Joe Biden is doing with his clean energy revolution. Instead of being left behind, we could lead the world again.
I spend a lot of time talking about climate change with different communities here in Nevada. And the one question that I get asked over and over again is, what are you doing here? Not a lot of climate activists look like me. My name is Catherine Lorenzo. I'm an Afro-Latina and I'm a climate activist. I grew up in a low-income neighborhood where pollution rates are often higher than wealthier areas, and a lot of kids have asthma. Switching to renewable energy would mean cleaner air, better health, and a steadier income for folks in neighborhoods like mine. Because solar PV installers and wind turbine techs are some of the fastest growing jobs in the country, and Joe Biden's plan is transformative. He knows that saving the planet isn't just a challenge to overcome, it's an opportunity for a better way of life.
So what's it going to be, America?
Are you ready to vote for Joe Biden?
Are you ready to solve the climate crisis?
Because our futures depend on it.
Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately.
To ensure that her most recent concert tour was green and sustainable, urging her fans to take similar actions in their daily lives. And even before she herself was old enough to vote, she held registration drives before her shows, signing up thousands of voters. She's a voice for her generation in both her music and her activism, here to perform My Future publicly for the first time, Billie Eilish.
You don't need me to tell you things are a mess. Donald Trump is destroying our country and everything we care about. We need leaders who will solve problems like climate change and COVID, not deny them. Leaders who will fight against systemic racism and inequality. And that starts by voting for someone who understands how much is at stake. Someone who's building a team that shares our values. It starts with voting against Donald Trump and for Joe Biden. Silence is not an option, and we cannot sit this one out. We all have to vote like our lives and the world depend on it, because they do. The only way to be certain of the future is to make it ourselves. Please register, please vote.
Products across the store this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, only at Hy-Vee.
Take care of the gun problem with me.
And as the new radical, extreme, socialist, lawless left doubles down on their anti-Second Amendment plans, they're also committed to dismantling police departments all across the country. Republicans, they're fighting back. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who is proposing freezing property taxes in cities that defund the police. Here with reaction, Governor Abbott. Governor, good to see you. Let me just ask first a COVID question. I understand the pattern seems to be holding. You get a hot spot. You've had it in Texas. Then the curve flattens. That toll goes up a little bit. Then you get a drop off, and now we're having a dramatic drop off. I understand. Is that correct?
So, Sean, we are seeing good numbers in the state of Texas. Most importantly, the numbers that we're looking at are the hospitalization numbers, and both the number of people hospitalized as well as those in intensive care units are on the decline. So this is good news for the state of Texas. We need to keep it going so we can begin to open up even more in the Lone Star State.
And by the way, that's happened in California, Arizona, and Florida now seeing the same thing. Lowest infection rate I saw, according to Johns Hopkins, on Monday this week since June. All right, let's get to this issue of these cities in Texas.
Okay, now we're going to talk about something close to my heart. The Black community in this country is hugely diverse. On my father's side, I am descended from African Americans who came from slave ships that landed in South Carolina and who were part of the Great Migration North that has played such a defining role in who we are as a nation. On my mother's side, my grandparents came here as immigrants, part of a rich history that has also defined America. They immigrated to this country from the West Indies through Ellis Island in the 1920s. I often think about how my grandmother must have felt when she first saw the Statue of Liberty and her raised torch. My family's story is not unique. Unless you're Native American, your family likely came here from somewhere else, whether it was 5 years ago or 200 years ago, whether it was by choice or by bondage. Etched into the DNA of who we are as a nation is the very idea that though you may be from somewhere else, you can find your home here. But that idea is in danger, now more than ever before.
Tell me when I should start reading. Dear Donald Trump, my name is Estella. I am 11 years old. My mom is my best friend. She came to America as a teenager over 20 years ago without papers in search of a better life. She married my dad, who served our country as a Marine in South America, Africa, and Iraq. My mom worked hard and paid taxes, and the Obama administration told her she could stay. My dad thought you would protect military families, so he voted for you in 2016, Mr. President. He says he won't vote for you again after what you did to our family.
The wife of a U.S. Marine veteran was deported to Mexico.
Instead of protecting us, you tore our world apart.
My mom is a good person, and she's not a criminal.
Now, my mom is gone, and she's been taken from us for no reason at all. Every day that passes, you deport more moms and dads and take them away from kids like me.
We will begin moving them out. Day one.
You separated thousands of children from their parents and you put them in cages.
A lot of visuals, a lot of young people involved in this, the entertainer.
I don't want them in our country. They're animals!
Mr. President, my mom is the wife of a proud American Marine and a mother of 2 American children. We are American families. We need a president who will bring people together, not tear them apart. Sincerely, Estella.
Nancy Sanchez, and this is my mother, Sylvia, and sister, Jessica. We're like all families. We work hard to build a good life.
I was born with spina bifida. That means my spinal cord didn't form as it should. And the doctors in my town said I wouldn't survive. They gave my mother no hope for my future.
I'm a U.S. citizen, but my mother is undocumented.
And I am a dreamer.
Yo hice lo que cualquier madre haría para salvar la vida de su niña.
My mother did what any mother would do to save her baby's life.
Tomé a mi niña en brazos, viajamos a la frontera. Al llegar al río, la levanté sobre el agua y cruzamos.
She took my sister in her arms and traveled for days to reach the border. And when they got to the river, she lifted my sister above the water and crossed.
We came to America before I was 1 year old. She saved my life.
No podía esperar. Tenía que venir en ese momento en busca de un milagro.
My mother had no choice. There was no time to wait to save my sister. She came here looking for a miracle.
Tenía miedo que nos encontraran, que nos detuvieran y nos regresaran, pero yo tenía que salvar a mi hija.
We were afraid they would find us and detain us, but she had to save her daughter.
Our home is here. North Carolina is all I know. I qualified for DACA, but Donald Trump took away my ability to apply for the program.
Trabajamos duro, salimos adelante, pagamos impuestos.
We work hard, we contribute to our community, and we pay our taxes. I've gone to school and built a good life for me and my 2 daughters.
I want to go to law school. I want to help my community. But ever since Donald Trump was elected, all our fears have returned.
We don't know if our family will be separated. Will my mom and sister be detained? Will my sister get the health care she needs and deserves?
I don't have the right ID, so I can't get health insurance through the exchange. I need health insurance. I deserve it, right?
Claro que sí, mija. Todos merecemos esperanza, buena vida y salud. Me rompe el corazón ver cómo separan a niños de sus familias en la frontera. Eso está mal. Esos bebés necesitan a sus padres.
It breaks our hearts to see children separated from their families at the border. That's wrong. Those children need their parents. On November 3rd, I'm going to vote for my mother, my sister, and my daughters. I will vote for a future where all of our lives have dignity and respect.
We need a leader who will fix the broken immigration system and commit to keeping families together.
I'm voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the daughter of immigrants. Who are you going to vote for?
Estamos todos juntos. Envía la palabra únete al 30.
Well, I think it all depends on what happens in the next 70 some odd days. If the President of the United States, who has a gigantic megaphone, has a disciplined effort to draw a contrast between he and Joe Biden, then it...
We are born of immigrants. That is who we are. Immigration is our origin story. After all, unless your family is Native American, all of our families come from someplace else. These new Americans, we see our own American stories. Life in America was not always easy. There was discrimination and hardship and poverty. But like you, they no doubt found inspiration in all those who had come before them. And they were able to muster faith that here in America, they might build a better life and give their children something more. Tension throughout our history between welcoming or rejecting the stranger, it's about more than just immigration. It's about the meaning of America. What kind of country do we want to be? Immigrants are the teachers who inspire our children. They're the doctors who keep us healthy. They're the engineers who design our skylines and the artists and the entertainers who touch our hearts. Immigrants are soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen who protect us. We can never say it often or loudly enough. Immigrants and refugees revitalize and renew America. It's not something to take for granted. It's something to cherish and to fight for. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.
Yeah.
questions he's taken Carl since March. 34 questions. No presidential candidate gets away with this.
Unbelievable. Think about this. People magazine, the very compliant
watching it than where any of the voters in her state are watching it. We'll see if that bears out.
Won't you stand by me? Oh, baby, won't you stand by me? Oh, stand, darling, junto a mí, junto a mí.
Mi gente, let's stand by each other. Don't forget to vote this November. Together we can make a change. Ya lo saben. No se olviden votar este noviembre. En la unión está la fuerza. Let's go.
That was Prince Royce. Amazing. Shout out to the Boogie Down Bronx. In this next piece, you'll hear about the vital role that women have played in moving us toward a more perfect union and breaking through that proverbial glass ceiling. And after that, you'll hear from Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton, the woman who put over 65 million cracks in it.
To understand what happens from here is in our hands.
She was called an instigator, a rule breaker, a rabble-rouser. And she is called the agitator, the pushy one, the one with attitude.
Now is the time for all of us to stand up and say enough is enough. We just got
From the ballot box to the factory floor, from her living room to the ER, she makes trouble, the good kind. She is the mother who cries out for sensible gun laws.
This is about a right and wrong thing.
The daughter who believes that equal justice means justice for all.
We are America.
The child who knows that Black lives matter. She is our warrior on the front lines, challenging authority to make the world safe.
Nobody is above the law.
Refusing to be told who makes decisions about her body or anyone else's.
These women and men of all ages, races,
races and backgrounds don't come to Planned Parenthood to make a political statement. They come to get quality, affordable health care.
You are disadvantaging her because of her sex.
And she knows that to change. And she knows that to change the world, you need to change the idea of power.
Excuse me, Mr. Barr, this is my time and I control it. Because we are fighting for you each and every single day.
And she knows her voice is heard and amplified by the women she elects to public office.
If we want families to succeed, we start by empowering women.
When I first got elected, I came to Washington, D.C. to fight for the issues that are so important in our community.
We look forward, though, to making sure that this district is finally well represented.
The things that we ran on going into November, we are doing that.
Women don't just fight for women. They fight for families. They fight for fairness, inclusion, justice.
To make our nation a more perfect union, especially for those people who are the most marginal.
If we're going to jumpstart the middle class, we've got to ensure that college is affordable.
Separation of families and children are detrimental to their health.
Give the victims of gender bias in the workplace the tools they need to seek justice.
Women are the most important political force in the United States of America.
She represents her views on education.
We've got to pay educators more, and we've got to hire more educators.
We're going to raise up the profile of teachers and celebrate who they are and give them better pay.
She represents her concerns about health care.
Healthcare is the #1 issue in this election, every day. Every day.
She speaks out on equal pay.
It's very frustrating for women everywhere to be feeling like they aren't getting paid what they should be.
And focuses on protecting our children.
Let's give parents the peace of mind that their kids are safe and are being set up for success.
Caring for our seniors and the people who care for them. She keeps this nation going even in challenging times. And while running for office is not easy,
What's wrong with my running for president of this country?
nevertheless, she persists.
But we learned a long time ago, you don't get what you don't fight for.
And perseveres.
This is our time.
And prevails.
Although we weren't able to shatter that highest, hardest glass ceiling this time, it's got about 18 million cracks in it. A record-breaking number of women ran in the midterms and won.
She builds coalitions, and she knows who her allies are. From the fight for health care to authoring the Violence Against Women's Act, to building a society where fairness and equality and opportunity applies to everyone. Joe Biden knows a stronger America is one that works for women. So go ahead and celebrate, you rabble-rouser, you rule-breaker, you force of nature. Our country, our world needs you. Keep rising and vote.
It's particularly African-American younger men. And this is where criminal justice reform is essential for the president to talk about. He's delivered on things that nobody else.
So much set up for him. A strong economy, plans for managing crises, including a pandemic. Yes, we Democrats would have disagreed with him on many things, but if he had put his own interests and ego aside, seen the humanity in a child ripped from her parents at the border, or a protester calling for justice, or a family wiped out by natural disaster, that would have been a good thing for America and the world. I wish Donald Trump knew how to be a president, because America needs a president right now. Throughout this time of crisis, Americans keep going, checking on neighbors, showing up to jobs as first responders, hospitals, grocery stores, nursing homes. Yes, it still takes a village. And we need leaders equal to this moment of sacrifice and service. We need Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Everyone has a story about Joe's caring and empathy. I remember him calling after my mother Dorothy died, and we talked about being raised by strong women. The best testament to Joe is how he's cared for his family. And how great is it that Dr. Jill Biden plans to keep teaching as First Lady. And Joe picked the right partner in Kamala. She's relentless in the pursuit of justice and equity, and she's kind. When her press secretary, Tyrone Gale, was dying of cancer, she dropped everything to be with him in his final moments. I know something about the slings and arrows she'll face, and believe me, this former district attorney and attorney general can handle them all. So this is the team to pull our nation back from the brink. But they can't do it without us. For 4 years, people have told me, I didn't realize how dangerous he was. I wish I could do it all over. Or worse, I should have voted. Look, this can't be another woulda, coulda, shoulda election. If you vote by mail, request your ballot now and send it back right away. If you vote in person, do it early. Become a poll worker. Most of all, no matter what, vote. As Michelle Obama and Bernie Sanders warned us, if Trump is reelected, things will get even worse. That's why we need unity now more than ever. Remember back in 2016 when Trump asked, what do you have to lose? Well, now we know. Our health care, our jobs, our loved ones, our leadership in the world, and even our post office. But let's set our sights higher than getting one man out of the White House. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to give us so much to vote for. Let's vote for the jobs that Joe's plan will create. Clean energy jobs to fight climate change, caregiving jobs with living wages. Vote for emergency relief that lifts small businesses and saves hardworking people from foreclosures and evictions. It's wrong that billionaires got $400 billion richer during the pandemic while millions lost their $600 a week in extra unemployment. Vote for the parents and teachers struggling to balance children's education and safety, and for healthcare workers fighting COVID-19 with little help from the White House. Vote for paid family leave and health care for everyone, for Social Security, Medicare, and Planned Parenthood. Vote for dreamers and their families. Vote for law enforcement purged of racial bias that keeps all our streets safe. Vote for justice for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, because Black lives matter. Vote for honest elections so we, not a foreign adversary, choose our president. Vote for the diverse, hopeful America we saw in last night's roll call. And don't forget, Joe and Kamala can win by 3 million votes and still lose. Take it from me. So we need numbers overwhelming so Trump can't sneak or steal his way to victory. Text VOTE 3030 to get started. Years ago yesterday, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. It took 7 decades of suffragists marching, picketing, and going to jail to push us closer to a more perfect union. 55 years ago, John Lewis marched and bled in Selma because that work was unfinished. Tonight, I'm thinking of the girls and boys who see themselves in America's future because of Kamala Harris, a Black woman, the daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants, and our nominee for vice president. This is our country's story, breaking down barriers and expanding the circle of possibility. And to the young people watching, don't give up on America. Despite our flaws and problems, we've come so far. We can still be a more just, equal country with opportunities previous generations could never have imagined. There's a lot of heartbreak in America now, and the truth is many things were broken before the pandemic. But as the saying goes, The world breaks everyone, and afterward, many are strong at the broken places. That's Joe Biden. He knows how to keep going, unify, and lead, because he's done that for his family and country. So come November, if we're strong together, we'll heal together. We'll redeem the soul and the promise of our country, led by President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris.
The media has conspired against him to keep those stories out of the living rooms of the American people, but everyone is beginning to watch, and we will see those numbers change once the convention begins. And just like I saw the president in 2016, do not underestimate him. He knows what to do. He should trust his instinct, and we'll be fine.
Reince, I don't know what to make of it. When you have a 48% decline,
I went to college, I got married, had 5 children in 6 years. So that was my life. When the children were grown, the opportunity to run for Congress came along.
She ran because another woman said, run. And she won, starting on a path that would make history. The first woman Speaker of the House.
For our daughters and our granddaughters, today we have broken the marble ceiling.
In her, so many saw themselves.
I did feel a real responsibility to other women as I stood on the shoulders of those who went before.
Now it was her turn to say, run. And run they did, winning and making her Speaker once again.
We didn't have a Speaker who would bring a gun bill to the floor. We didn't have a Speaker who would bring a Dreamers issue to the floor. We do now.
And that's good for every American. But not everyone was on board.
Nancy Pelosi.
I'm a mother of 5, grandmother of 9. I know a temper tantrum when I see one. The power of the Speaker is awesome. Awesome. If you want to go into the arena, you have to be prepared to take a punch. But you also have to be prepared to throw a punch for the children.
Throw a punch for the children. From running the House to Speaker of the House and taking on the White House, unapologetic, unafraid.
Madam Speaker.
Congratulations, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
And now, please welcome Speaker of the United States House.
Here it is in white. There it is. In history, more than 60% women, people of color, and LGBTQ. Our diversity is our strength. Our unity is our power. This month, as America marks the centennial of women, finally women winning the right to vote, we do so with 105.
Let the optimism and love that the
Proudly, 90 are Democrats. To win the vote, women marched and fought and never gave in. We stand on their shoulders, charged with carrying forward the unfinished work of our nation advanced by heroes, from Seneca Falls to Selma to Stonewall. 4 years ago, when President Obama and Vice President Biden were in the White House, they made us proud, and their leadership made our country great. In that spirit, we come together now, not to decry the darkness, but to light a way forward for our country. That is the guiding purpose of House Democrats, fighting for the people. We have sent the Senate bills for lower health care costs, for bigger paychecks, for cleaner government, protecting John Lewis's voting rights, and enacting George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We've sent the Senate bills to protect our dreamers, LGBTQ equality, and prevent gun violence, and to preserve our planet for future generations, and even more. All of this is possible for America. Who was standing in the way? Mitch McConnell, and Donald Trump. Our nation faces the worst health and economic catastrophe in our history. More than 5 million Americans are infected by the coronavirus. Over 170,000 have died. The science-based action in the HEROES Act we enacted 3 months ago is essential to safeguard lives, livelihood, and the life of our democracy. The virus, they're trying to crush the Affordable Care Act and its pre-existing conditions benefit. As Speaker of the House, I've seen firsthand Donald Trump's disrespect for facts, for working families, and for women in particular. Disrespect written into his policies toward our health and our rights, not just his conduct. But we know what he doesn't, that when women succeed, America succeeds. And so we are unleashing the power of women to take our rightful place in our national life by championing a woman's right to choose and defending Roe v. Wade, securing safe and affordable child care, preserving Social Security, and passing equal pay for equal work. Who's standing in the way? Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. So here is our answer. We will remember in November when we will elect Joe Biden president, whose heart is full of love for America, and rid the country of Trump's heartless disregard for America's goodness. Joe Biden's faith in God gives him the courage to lead.
Candidate Senator Elizabeth Warren and former President Obama. We understand he will not be holding back his criticism of his successor, all leading up to Senator Kamala Harris when she closes out the night tonight.
And as we await all of that, let's take a look back at a quick recap of the night so far.
Mentioned tonight, the Democrats will roll out their biggest guns yet. Barack Obama set to embrace the vice president he calls a brother and launch a blistering attack on the president he condemns for endangering our democracy.
And against Donald Trump. NBC News national correspondent Peter Alexander is in Philadelphia right now with some.
In the House, we will win a Democratic majority in the Senate, we will elect Kamala Harris vice president, and we will elect Joe Biden president of the United States of America.
His nomination for Vice President of the United States. Good evening. I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. Welcome to CBS News coverage of this star-studded night. 3 of the Democratic National Convention. In this hour, Senator Kamala Harris will...
House is the people's house. And to ensure it stays that way, we need everyone to help fund our work to elect Joe Biden and Democrats up and down the ballot. If you are able, please go to joebiden.com now and chip in whatever you can to support this campaign. Last year, under Speaker Pelosi's leadership, the House reauthorized the Violence Against Women Act. Joe Biden wrote that landmark law nearly 30 years ago. Since then, he and other leaders have built on it. But for all of this work...
Great to have you all with us tonight. Chris Wallace, let me start with you. We just heard from Hillary Clinton moments ago, some strong words about things that she wishes had gone very differently.
1992, my husband shot me and left me for dead. For 13 years, my son and I had been abused by him. We finally escaped, but he tracked us down. Back then, there was limited help available and no national hotline to call. Local shelters were full. I didn't even know what was happening to me then, domestic violence. Now working to end domestic violence is my life's work.
I'm Marisha Harvate. When I started doing research to play Detective Olivia Benson on Law & Order SVU over 20 years ago, I was shocked to find out how many people, including children, experience physical or sexual abuse. The statistics fueled my resolve, and I committed myself to the movement to end this violence.
My name is Carly Dryden. In my small hometown, I didn't feel like I could speak out about my experience with sexual assault. But at the University of Puget Sound, I met an incredible force of people working to end the culture of sexual assault. I went from survivor to advocate.
As the president and CEO of the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, I've seen Joe Biden's passionate leadership in passing the Violence Against Women Act. Now, domestic violence rates are rising due to this pandemic. We need Congress to reauthorize and enhance that law. We need leaders who believe that a woman's life is worth fighting for.
Joe Biden is that kind of leader. I created the Joyful Heart Foundation to help survivors heal and to change the way our society responds to sexual violence. The Vice President has worked tirelessly by our side to end the backlog of hundreds of thousands of untested rape kits. And our work will continue because testing kits not only makes our country safer, but it sends a vital message to survivors that what happened to them matters.
The most important thing you can say to a survivor is, I hear you. That's why I became a leader in It's On Us. It's a program started by Vice President Biden to eliminate sexual assault on college campuses and support a new generation of advocates, including men and boys. Because if you're silent, you're complicit, and we're just getting started.
I am voting for Joe Biden on behalf of all victims and survivors of domestic violence.
I'm voting for Joe Biden because it's on my generation to make sure that we never go back.
I'm voting for Joe Biden for my daughter, for my sons, for...
So we have Democrats worried about complacency, and that may say something also, Brett, about the...
punching, kicking, choking, threatening with a knife or a gun.
He had always threatened me if I had ever called the police on him that he would kill me.
You didn't hear voices like these in the halls of the U.S. Capitol.
My husband stabbed me 13 times and broke my neck while the police were on the scene. I nearly died and I am permanently paralyzed.
Senator Joe Biden invited them to speak.
Battered women need to be taken seriously. Proper police response can prevent what happened to me from happening to someone else. Thank you.
Thank you.
At the time, the police considered domestic violence something that was not a crime. In the home, it's a private matter. And so women were responsible for their own injuries.
I was about to say I know. Well, I don't know. I can only guess how painful that is.
Growing up, our father said that the greatest of all sins was the abuse of power. He told us when a bully, when someone bigger or stronger takes advantage of you, that is a really grave sin. The expectation was for all four of us to be a person of character. You see something wrong? We were then expected to stand up and do something about it.
When Joe introduced the legislation, few believed it could pass.
Our bill is an ambitious undertaking. It is the first attempt to address violent crimes against women.
It was hard to get the votes because you had some traditionalists who just didn't believe that there should be laws about this.
But Joe doesn't give up. He's tenacious. Joe persevered, and he's very good at persuasion.
And they're doing nothing to help them. Nothing.
He brought together law enforcement, prosecutors, advocates, and survivors.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and speak.
In 1990,
thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and speak.
In 1994, the Violence Against Women Act became law and protected millions of American women.
A lot of the change in the attitudes we have about domestic violence were shaped by his leadership on this.
If you see something wrong, we were then expected to stand up and do something about it.
If you're just joining us, welcome.
I just finished a PhD.
They said it was because of his work with the former president. Tonight, Mr. Obama will ask the...
Unemployment has skyrocketed and
I was going to ask you about the lessons learned from 2016, but she talked about it right there, the need to get
be excited about. She's the future of the party. We were concerned about his ability to lead the party at this stage.
Michael Nutter, the focus right now at this convention is on women, but broadly we've been hearing about issues, we've been hearing about gun violence, about
the glue between these generations and pull all of these policies together. I think that also that they're opening tonight on gun violence for the Democrats, very
Biden-Harris economic plan. Please welcome Hilda Solis.
Hello, I'm Hilda Solis. The day Vice President Biden swore me in as Secretary of Labor was one of the proudest moments of my life. My parents realized they had achieved their American dream because the daughter of 2 blue-collar immigrants would make history and give voice to people just like them. American workers need a fighter now more than ever, and Joe Biden is that person because he has done it before and I've seen it firsthand. He and President Obama made it easier for home care workers to organize. They extended overtime pay to more than 4 million workers. They saved the automobile industry and a whole lot of good union jobs with it. And when millions of families lost their homes, my friend from California, Senator Kamala Harris, took on the big banks and won. But because of Donald Trump's failures, we must once again rescue a sinking economy. Millions of Americans are out of work, and communities of color are the hardest hit. Millions of essential workers are putting their lives at risk with little protections, and millions more are just plain tired. That's why Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually have a plan, not only to recover what we lost, but to improve upon it, to build back better. Creating 5 million good union jobs by bringing back supply chains to America, that's building back better. Creating millions of jobs by investing in clean energy, that's building back better. And making sure that working families can afford childcare, that's how we build back better. So let me borrow and slightly edit something Joe Biden said at my swearing in. When it comes to expanding the economy for all people, no one is going to be a stronger voice than our next president, Joe Biden. The conversation you're about to see proves it.
Everybody is for that. When it comes to the issues
Coronavirus pandemic.
And behind every business, there's a family.
A lot of people clearly are in pain right now.
For every farm, there's a fight to stay whole. There's hard work and there's heartbreak.
We are going to lose 20 to 30% of our small businesses.
This is the story of Kevin and Molly Johnson, a family-owned business in Lake County, Ohio.
We have 10 to 12 employees on a given day. When COVID-19 hit, it was a lot of confusion.
I remember being scared and being uncertain.
We shut down last week because we ran out of work and we had enough to come in for another week. If we don't get additional orders in, we're going to have to look at another shutdown.
You can't make a big purchase, equipment, you can't plan for the future.
We don't even know if we can cover payroll. When this isn't going well, it's scary.
You're kind of forgotten, right? The president always bragging about the stock market sort of leaves a lot of small manufacturing companies behind.
We could use a little help right now, and it just seems like we get one step forward and then 2 steps back.
This is the story of Jernay Green, who just started a clothing store and then COVID hit.
Fashion has been a love of mine since I was a kid. I worked really hard to save money to open this store. Did my ribbon cutting December 14th of 2019, and it was booming, and then bam, here's COVID. It was scary. No one was buying anything. My employees, they're gone. I reached out to my bank, but they stated that they had no more money. It's gone to a lot of the bigger businesses, the $1 million businesses who get the bailout, and a small business like myself is just left to struggle. Being a female business owner under President Trump, I feel, how can I say, home alone.
This is the story of Lynn Ta and her two
rising stars in the Democratic Party, Congresswoman from Arizona.
And serve part-time, close to advocacy for him, and also
imaginable with tested, trusted.
The day of the shutdown, we were actually reviewed, waiting to get in. It was pretty exciting. And on the day of the shutdown, we were actually reviewed in the Los Angeles Times. On that day, the virus was announced as a global pandemic.
It's really, really sad to see. And if we don't turn this around soon, I mean, we're going to see this not just be this year, but you're going to see ghost town for Main Street USA.
The first decision that I had to make, because 100 people are looking at you, and unfortunately, the call was to furlough everybody. At this point, I don't even see myself in business next month.
¿Qué efecto de esta pandemia ha sido en su trabajo y su espíritu?
Es más difícil, mucho más trabajo. Yo voy a hacer todo lo posible por salvar el restaurante.
We don't ask for much from government, but catch us when we're falling. And I know that it must feel like you're falling right now without a net.
Restaurants are among the hardest businesses to succeed at, but I was going to do it in a way that was going to provide a successful career for not only myself, but 100 employees.
This is the story of Dan Reiner. He's a fifth-generation farmer struggling to keep his business alive. I'm not so sure that the president understands that when he thinks about business, I don't think he thinks about farmers as a business.
No, he has no clue about this stuff.
Dan, tell me a little bit about the farm.
We've been here since 1864. Trade tariffs with China have just been horrible. Part of the language in the trade deal said that China does not have to buy unless the price is to their advantage. What kind of trade deal is that? That's no deal. Then when COVID hit, then everything just plummeted. Getting through now, that's the problem. That's the day-to-day battle.
I believe that Joe Biden will be a clear voice for us, something that we have not had.
Joe Biden has an understanding of what the average American is experiencing. I think he's with me.
Well, enough is enough. It's time to help small businesses, middle-class folks manage their way through a pandemic.
I have a lot of confidence in Joe Biden. He's a fighter and he's the real deal.
We've taken a lot of
But it is pretty clear that that's an issue that the Republicans are going to have to take up.
And you? Hi. Tonight, we've heard from the people who make America work, people who put their lives on the line to keep our country going, and since COVID-19 hit, they've taken one gut punch after another. And what has the COVID fallout done to our babies? Well, I'm here at the Early Childhood Education Center in Springfield, Massachusetts, which has been closed for months. Childcare was already hard to find before the pandemic, and now parents are stuck. No idea when schools can safely reopen, and even fewer childcare options. The devastation is enormous, and the way I see it, big problems demand big solutions. Now, I love a good plan. And Joe Biden has some really good plans. Plans to bring back union jobs in manufacturing and create new union jobs in clean energy. Plans to increase Social Security benefits, cancel billions in student loan debt, and make our bankruptcy laws work for families instead of the creditors who cheat them. These plans reflect a central truth. Our economic system has been rigged to give bailouts to billionaires and kick dirt in the face of everyone else. But we can build a thriving economy by investing in families and fixing what's broken. Joe's plan to build back better includes making the wealthy pay their fair share, holding corporations accountable, repairing racial inequities, and fighting corruption in Washington. Let me tell you about one of Joe's plans that's especially close to my heart, childcare. As a little girl growing up in Oklahoma, what I wanted most in the world was to be a teacher. I loved teaching. And when I had babies and was juggling my first big teaching job down in Texas, it was hard. But I could do hard. The thing that almost sank me, childcare. One night, my Aunt Bee called just to check in, and I thought I was fine. But then I just broke down and started to cry. I had tried holding it all together, but without reliable childcare, working was nearly impossible. And when I told Aunt Bee I was going to quit my job, I thought my heart would break. And then she said the words that changed my life. I can't get there tomorrow, but I'll come on Thursday. And she arrived with 7 suitcases and a Pekingese named Buddy and stayed for 16 years. I get to be here tonight because of my Aunt Bee. I learned a fundamental truth. Nobody makes it on their own. And yet, here we are, 2 generations of working parents later. And if you have a baby and don't have an Aunt Bee, you're on your own. And here's why that is wrong. We build infrastructure like roads and bridges and communication systems so that people can work. That infrastructure helps us all because it keeps our economy going. It's time to recognize that childcare is part of the basic infrastructure of this nation. It's infrastructure for families. Joe and Kamala will make high-quality childcare affordable for every family, make preschool universal, and raise the wages of every childcare worker. Make preschool universal and raise the wages of every childcare worker. Now, that's just one plan, but it gives you an idea of how we get this country working for everyone. Donald Trump's ignorance and incompetence have always been a danger to our country. COVID-19 was Trump's biggest test. He failed miserably. Today, America has the most COVID deaths in the world and an economic collapse. And both crises are falling hardest on Black and brown families. Hardest on Black and brown families. Millions out of work, millions more trapped in cycles of poverty, millions on the brink of losing their homes, millions of restaurants and stores hanging by a thread. This crisis is bad, and it didn't have to be this way. This crisis is on Donald Trump and the Republicans who enable him. On November 3rd, we will hold them all accountable. So, whether you're planning to vote wearing a mask or vote by mail, please take out your phone right now. Please stay in the fight to get big things done. We stay in this fight so that when our children and our grandchildren ask what we did during this dark chapter in our nation's history, we will be able to look them squarely in the eye and say, we organized, we persisted, and we changed America. We persisted and we changed America.
And there's Senator Elizabeth Warren using that phrase, persistence, as she is known for. She persisted. Coming.
Plans in the Biden plan are not her plans, maybe less progressive than she was, but there are some that fit the bill. More from our all-star panel as we await remarks from President Obama and the Democrats' vice presidential nominee,
Michelle Obama. And through it all, Joe Biden was by his side, except for maybe marrying Michelle. You can witness their mutual respect and affection in this clip. Take a look.
For your love of country and for your lifetime of service that will endure through the generations, I'd like to ask the military aide to join us on stage. For the final time as president, I am pleased to award our nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. first and only time in my presidency, I will bestow this medal with an additional level of veneration, an honor my three most recent successors reserved for only three others: Pope John Paul II, President Ronald Reagan, and General Colin Powell. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to award the Presidential Medal of Freedom with distinction to my brother, Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr. Will the aide please read the citation?
Vice President Joseph R. Biden, Jr. In a career of public service spanning nearly half a century, Vice President Joseph R. Biden, Jr. has left his mark on almost every part of our nation, fighting for a stronger middle class, a fairer judicial system, and a smarter foreign policy, providing unyielding support for our troops, combating crime and violence against women, leading our quest to cure cancer, and safeguarding the landmark American Recovery and Reinvestment Act from corruption. With his charm, candor, unabashed optimism, and deep and abiding patriotism, Joe Biden has garnered the respect and esteem of colleagues of both parties, and the friendship of people across the nation and around the world, while summoning the strength, faith, and grace to overcome great personal tragedy. This son of Scranton, Claymont, and Wilmington has become one of the most consequential vice presidents in American history, an accolade that nonetheless rests firmly behind his legacy as husband, father, and grandfather. A grateful nation thanks Vice President Joseph R. Biden, Jr. for his lifetime of service on behalf of the United States of America.
About his tenure he so badly craves last.
Good evening, everybody. As you've seen by now, this isn't a normal convention. It's not a normal time. So tonight I want to talk as plainly as I can about the stakes in this election. Because what we do these next 76 days will echo through generations to come. I'm in Philadelphia, where our Constitution was drafted and signed. It wasn't a perfect document. It allowed for the inhumanity of slavery and failed to guarantee women, and even men who didn't own property, the right to participate in the political process. But embedded in this document was a North Star that would guide future generations. A system of representative government, a democracy, through which we could better realize our highest ideals. Through which we could better realize our highest ideals. Through civil war and bitter struggles, we improved this Constitution to include the voices of those who'd once been left out. And gradually we made this country more just and more equal and more free. The one constitutional office elected by all of the people is the presidency. So at a minimum, we should expect a president to feel a sense of responsibility for the safety and welfare of all 330 million of us, regardless of what we look like, how we worship, who we love, how much money we have, or who we voted for. But we should also expect a president to be the custodian of this democracy. We should expect that regardless of ego, ambition, or political beliefs, the president will preserve, protect, and defend the freedoms and ideals that so many Americans marched for, went to jail for, fought for, and died for. I have sat in the Oval Office with both of the men who are running for president. I never expected that my successor would embrace my vision or continue my policies. I did hope, for the sake of our country, that Donald Trump might show some interest in taking the job seriously. that he might come to feel the weight of the office and discover some reverence for the democracy that had been placed in his care. But he never did. For close to 4 years now, he has shown no interest in putting in the work. No interest in finding common ground. No interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends. No interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves. Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't. And the consequences of that failure are severe. 170,000 Americans dead. Millions of jobs gone, while those at the top taken more than ever. Our worst impulses unleashed, our proud reputation around the world badly diminished, and our democratic institutions threatened like never before. Now, I know that in times as polarized as these, most of you have already made up your mind. But maybe you're still not sure which candidate you'll vote for, or whether you'll vote at all. Maybe you're tired of the direction we're headed, but you can't see a better path yet. Or you just don't know enough about the person who wants to lead us there. So let me tell you about my friend, Joe Biden. 12 years ago, when I began my search for vice president, I didn't know I'd end up finding a brother. Joe and I come from different places, different generations, but what I quickly came to admire about Joe Biden is his resilience, born of too much struggle, his empathy, born of too much grief. By the words his parents taught him, no one's better than you, Joe, but you're better than nobody. That empathy, that decency, the belief that everybody counts, that's who Joe is. When he talks with someone who's lost her job, Joe remembers the night his father sat him down to say that he'd lost his. When Joe listens to a parent who's trying to hold it all together right now, he does it as a single dad who took the train back to Wilmington each and every night so he could tuck his kids into bed. When he meets with military families who've lost their hero, he does it as a kindred spirit, the parent of an American soldier, somebody whose faith has endured the hardest loss there is. For 8 years, Joe was the last one in the room whenever I faced a big decision. He made me a better president, and he's got the character and the experience to make us a better country. And in my friend Kamala Harris, he's chosen an ideal partner who is more than prepared for the job. Someone who knows what it's like to overcome barriers and who's made a career fighting to help others live out their own American dream. Along with the experience needed to get things done, Joe and Kamala have concrete policies that will turn their vision of a better, fairer, stronger country into reality. They will get this pandemic under control, like Joe did when he helped me manage H1N1 and prevent an Ebola outbreak from reaching our shores. They'll expand health care to more Americans, like Joe and I did 10 years ago, when he helped craft the Affordable Care Act and nail down the votes to make it the law. They'll rescue the economy, like Joe helped me do after the Great Recession. I asked him to manage the Recovery Act, which jump-started the longest stretch of job growth in history. And he sees this moment now, not as a chance to get back to where we were, but to make long overdue changes so that our economy actually makes life a little easier for everybody. Whether it's the waitress trying to raise a kid on her own, or the shift worker always on the edge of getting laid off, or the student figuring out how to pay for next semester's classes. Joe and Kamala will restore our standing in the world. And as we've learned from this pandemic, that matters. Joe knows the world, and the world knows him. He knows that our true strength comes from setting an example that the world wants to follow. A nation that stands with democracy, not dictators. A nation that can inspire and mobilize others to overcome threats like climate change and terrorism, poverty and disease. But more than anything, what I know about Joe, what I know about Kamala, is that they actually care about every American. And that they care deeply about this democracy. They believe that in a democracy, the right to vote is sacred, and we should be making it easier for people to cast their ballots, not harder. They believe that no one, including the president, is above the law, and that no public official, including the president, should use their office to enrich themselves or their supporters, including the president, should use their office to enrich themselves or their supporters. They understand that in this democracy, the commander-in-chief does not use the men and women of our military who are willing to risk everything to protect our nation as political props to deploy against peaceful protesters on our own soil. They understand that political opponents aren't un-American just because they disagree with you. The free press isn't the enemy, but the way we hold officials accountable. That our ability to work together to solve big problems like a pandemic depend on a fidelity to facts and science and logic, and not just making stuff up. None of this should be controversial. These shouldn't be Republican principles or Democratic principles. They are American principles. But at this moment, this president and those who enable him have shown they don't believe in these things. Tonight, I'm asking you to believe in Joe and Kamala's ability to lead this country out of these dark times and build it back better. Out of these dark times and build it back better. But here's the thing. No single American can fix this country alone. Not even a president. Democracy was never meant to be transactional. You give me your vote, I make everything better. It requires an active and informed citizenry. So I'm also asking you to believe in your own ability, to embrace your own responsibility as citizens, to make sure that the basic tenets of our democracy endure. Because that's what's at stake right now. Our democracy. Look, I understand why a lot of Americans are down on government. The way the rules have been set up and abused in Congress make it easier for special interests to stop progress than to make progress. Believe me, I know it. I understand why a white factory worker who's seen his wages cut or his job shipped overseas might feel like the government no longer looks out for him, and why a black mom might feel like it never looked out for her at all. I understand why a new immigrant might look around this country and wonder whether there's still a place for him here. Well, here's the point. This president and those in power, those who benefit from keeping things the way they are counting on your cynicism. They know they can't win you over with their policies. So they're hoping to make it as hard as possible for you to vote and to convince you that your vote does not matter. That is how they win. That is how they get to keep making decisions that affect your life and the lives of the people you love. That's how the economy will keep getting skewed to the wealthy and well-connected. How our health systems will let more people fall through the cracks. That's how a democracy withers, until it's no democracy at all. And we cannot let that happen. Do not let them take away your power. Do not let them take away your democracy. Make a plan right now for how you are going to get involved and vote. Do it as early as you can and tell your family and friends how they can vote too. Do what Americans have done for over 2 centuries when faced with even tougher times than this. All those quiet heroes who found the courage to keep marching, keep pushing in the face of hardship and injustice. Last month, we lost a giant of American democracy in John Lewis. And some years ago, I sat down with John and a few remaining leaders of the early civil rights movement. One of them told me he never imagined he'd walk into the White House and see a president who looked like his grandson. And see a president who looked like his grandson. And then he told me that he had looked it up. And it turned out that on the very day that I was born, he was marching into a jail cell, trying to end Jim Crow segregation in the South. What we do echoes through generations. Whatever our backgrounds, we are all the children of Americans who fought the good fight. Great-grandparents working in fire traps and sweatshops without rights or representation. Farmers losing their dreams to dust. Irish and Italians and Asians and Latinos told, go back where you come from. Jews and Catholics, Muslims and Sikhs made to feel suspect for the way they worshipped. Black Americans chained and whipped and hanged, spit on for trying to sit at lunch counters, beaten for trying to vote. If anyone had a right to believe that this democracy did not work and could not work, it was those Americans, our ancestors. They were on the receiving end of a democracy that had fallen short all their lives. They knew how far the daily reality of America strayed from the myth. And yet, instead of giving up, they joined together. And they said, somehow, some way, we are going to make this work. We are going to bring those words in our founding documents to life. I have seen that same spirit rising these past few years. Folks of every age and background who packed city centers and airports and rural roads so that families wouldn't be separated, so that another classroom wouldn't get shot up, so that our kids won't grow up on an uninhabitable planet. Americans of all races joining together to declare, in the face of injustice and brutality at the hands of the state, that Black lives matter. No more, but no less. So that no child in this country feels the continuing sting of racism. To the young people who led us this summer, telling us we need to be better, in so many ways, you are this country's dreams fulfilled. Earlier generations had to be persuaded that everyone has equal worth. For you, it's a given, a conviction. And what I want you to know is that for all its messiness and frustrations, your system of self-government can be harnessed to help you realize those convictions for all of us. You can give our democracy new meaning. You can take it to a better place. You're the missing ingredient. The ones who will decide whether or not America becomes the country that fully lives up to its creed. That work will continue long after this election. But any chance of success depends entirely on the outcome of this election. This administration has shown it will tear our democracy down if that's what it takes for them to win. So we have to get busy building it up by pouring all our efforts into these 76 days about what this country that we love stands for today and for all our days to come. Stay safe. God bless.
Former President Barack Obama speaking for about 15 minutes from the Museum of the American Revolution in Philadelphia with, as has been noted in all of these speeches, a call to action to make a plan to vote, a full-throated support of his former Vice President, Joe Biden, and his most direct criticism of this current President, Donald Trump. In the middle of this speech, the current occupant of the House behind
them together by reducing recidivism. I am so thrilled for her to become the Vice President of the United States. Now, please welcome our convention chair, Congressman.
That the presidential candidate who obtained a majority of all pledged and automatic delegates will nominate the Democratic candidate for Vice President. In accordance with our rules, Vice President Biden has nominated.
Heard this evening from President Trump's predecessor,
Senator Kamala Harris, as his vice presidential candidate. Our rules further provide that if only one candidate is nominated for vice president, the chair is authorized to declare the nominee the Democratic candidate for vice president. As such, with only one nomination received and pursuant to our Democratic candidate for vice president, I'm pleased to report that Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris has been invited to deliver an acceptance speech.
Kamala Harris is my auntie,
my stepmom,
my big sister, which means you'll always be my older sister.
And there are some things we'd like to share with you. To my brother and me, you'll always be Mamala, the world's greatest stepmom.
You're my role model who taught me I could do and be anything I wanted. My very first friend, my confidant, my partner in mischief and in justice.
You're a rock, not just for our dad, but for 3 generations of our big blended family.
You showed me the importance of public service and made sure I grew up surrounded by smart, strong, ambitious women every day. Growing up, heaven help the poor kid who picked on me because my big sister would be there in a flash, ready to have my back. Well, now we've got your back as you and Joe fight to protect our democracy.
And there's no union more perfect than the one that brings us all to your kitchen table every Sunday night for stir fry, feta chicken, or spaghetti and meatball family dinners.
And now that I'm a mom, you're showing my daughters and so many girls around the world who look like them what's possible and what it's like to move through the world as fierce, formidable, phenomenal women in their own unique way. I love you. I admire you. I am so proud of you. And even though Mommy's not here to see her first daughter step into history, the entire nation will see in your strength, your integrity, your intelligence, and your optimism the values that she raised us with.
We love you, Kamala.
We're so proud of you, Auntie.
You mean the world to us, Kamala.
And we could not be more excited
To share you with the world
As the next
Vice President
Vice President of the United States.
Joe Biden has selected Kamala Harris as his running mate.
She is the first Black woman, first South Asian woman to be named on the Democratic ticket.
This is a historic pick.
Someone who looks like us on a presidential ticket. That's crazy.
Kamala Harris is us. She was born in Oakland.
The daughter of immigrants.
The daughter of Chamberlain.
Big sister and protector.
She is an HBCU grad.
She is a woman of many firsts.
Ella reconoce el trabajo duro.
She's a hard worker, a really hard worker.
She's brilliant, she's tough, and she's got a big future.
She's probably one of the best role models. Kamala Harris is like a dream to me.
Senator Harris cares about people. There's no doubt about it.
When she says for the people, it is in every ounce of who she is. She's for us. She's for us.
She fights for women's rights. She fights to end mass incarceration.
She is a fearless advocate for the voiceless. The litmus test for America is how we are treating Black women.
Now I'm talking about someone who can fight for Black people, brown people, undocumented people, LGBT people, disabled people, young people, old people, all of America.
It's about all of us knowing our power in each of us to lift people up, right? And to remind them that we see them and we hear them and that they matter.
Vice President of the United States?
Greetings, America. It is truly an honor to be speaking with you tonight. That I am here tonight is a testament to the dedication of generations before me. Women and men who believed so fiercely in the promise of equality, liberty, and justice for all. This week marks the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, and we celebrate the women who fought for that right. Yet so many of the Black women who helped secure that victory were still prohibited from voting long after its ratification. But they were undeterred. Without fanfare or recognition, they organized and testified and rallied and marched and fought, not just for their vote, but for a seat at the table. These women and the generations that followed worked to make democracy and opportunity real in the lives of all of us who followed. They paved the way for the trailblazing leadership of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And these women inspired us to pick up the torch and fight on. Women like Mary Church Terrell, Mary Cloyd Bethune, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Diane Nash, Constance Baker Motley, and the great Shirley Chisholm. We're not often taught their stories, but as Americans, we all stand on their shoulders. And there's another woman whose name isn't known, whose story isn't shared, another woman whose shoulders I stand on, and that's my mother, Shamala Gopalan Harris. She came here from India at age 19 to pursue her dream of curing cancer. At the University of California, Berkeley, she met my father, Donald Harris, who had come from Jamaica to study economics. They fell in love in that most American way while marching together for justice in the civil rights movement of the 1960s. In the streets of Oakland and Berkeley, I got a stroller's eye view of people getting into what the great John Lewis called good trouble. When I was 5, my parents split, and my mother raised us mostly on her own. Like so many mothers, she worked around the clock to make it work, packing lunches before we woke up and paying bills after we went to bed, helping us with homework at the kitchen table and shuttling us to church for choir practice. She made it look easy, though it never was. My mother instilled in my sister Maya and me the values that would chart the course of our lives. She raised us to be proud, strong Black women, and she raised us to know and be proud of our Indian heritage. She taught us to put family first, the family you're born into and the family you choose. Family is my husband, Doug, who I met on a blind date set up by my best friend. Family is our beautiful children, Cole and Ella, who call me Mamala. Family is my sister. Family is my best friend, my nieces, and my godchildren. Family is my uncles, my aunts, and my chitties. Family is Mrs. Shelton, my second mother who lived 2 doors down and helped raise me. Family is my beloved Alpha Kappa Alpha, our Divine Nine, and my HBCU brothers and sisters. Family is the friends I turn to when my mother, the most important person in my life, passed away from cancer. And even as she taught us to keep our family at the center of our world, she also pushed us to see a world beyond ourselves. She taught us to be conscious and compassionate about the struggles of all people, to believe public service is a noble cause and the fight for justice is a shared responsibility. Guided by the words I spoke from the first time I stood in a courtroom. Kamala Harris, for the people. I have fought for children and survivors of sexual assault. I fought against transnational criminal organizations. I took on the biggest banks and helped take down one of the biggest for-profit colleges. I know a predator when I see one. My mother taught me that service to others gives life purpose and meaning. And oh, how I wish she were here tonight, but I know she's looking down on me from above. I keep thinking about that 25-year-old Indian woman, all of 5 feet tall, who gave birth to me at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. On that day, she probably could have never imagined that I would be standing before you now and speaking these words. I accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States of America. I do so committed to the values she taught me, to the word that teaches me to walk by faith and not by sight, and to a vision passed on through generations of Americans, one that Joe Biden shares, a vision of our nation as a beloved community, where all are welcome, no matter what we look like, no matter where we come from or who we love. A country where we may not agree on every detail, but we are united by the fundamental belief that every human being is of infinite worth, deserving of compassion, dignity, and respect. A country where we look out for one another, where we rise and fall as one, where we face our challenges and celebrate our triumphs together. Today, that country feels distant. Donald Trump's failure of leadership has cost lives and livelihoods. If you're a parent struggling with your child's remote learning, or you're a teacher struggling on the other side of that screen, you know what we're doing right now is not working. And we are a nation that is grieving the loss of life, the loss of jobs, the loss of opportunities, the loss of normalcy, and yes, the loss of certainty. And while this virus touches us all, we got to be honest, it is not an equal opportunity offender. Black, Latino, and indigenous people are suffering and dying disproportionately. And this is not a coincidence. It is the effect of structural racism, of inequities in education and technology, healthcare and housing, job security and transportation, the injustice in reproductive and maternal health care, in the excessive use of force by police, and in our broader criminal justice system. This virus, it has no eyes, and yet it knows exactly how we see each other and how we treat each other. And let's be clear, there is no vaccine for racism. We've got to do the work. We've got to do the work. For George Floyd, for Breonna Taylor, for the lives of too many others to name, for our children, and for all of us. We've got to do the work to fulfill that promise of equal justice under law. Because here's the thing, none of us are free until all of us are free. So we're at an inflection point. The constant chaos leaves us adrift. The incompetence makes us feel afraid. The callousness makes us feel alone. It's a lot. And here's the thing, we can do better and deserve so much more. We must elect a president who will bring something different, something better, and do the important work. A president who will bring all of us together, Black, white, Latino, Asian, indigenous, to achieve the future we collectively want. We must elect Joe Biden. And I will tell you, I knew Joe as vice president. I knew Joe on the campaign trail. And I first got to know Joe as the father of my friend. So Joe's son, Bo, and I served as attorneys general of our states, Delaware and California. During the Great Recession, he and I spoke on the phone nearly every day, working together to win back billions of dollars for homeowners from the big banks that foreclosed on people's homes. And Bo and I, we would talk about his family, how as a single father, Joe would spend 4 hours every day riding the train back and forth from Wilmington to Washington. Bo and Hunter got to have breakfast every morning with their dad. They went to sleep every night with the sound of his voice reading bedtime stories. And while they endured an unspeakable loss, those two little boys always knew that they were deeply, unconditionally loved. And what also moved me about Joe is the work that he did as he was going back and forth. This is the leader who wrote the Violence Against Women Act and enacted the assault weapons ban, who as vice president implemented the Recovery Act, which brought our country back from the Great Recessions. He championed the Affordable Care Act, protecting millions of Americans with pre-existing conditions, who spent decades promoting American values and interests around the world. Joe, he believes we stand with our allies and stand up to our adversaries. Right now, we have a president who turns our tragedies into political weapons. Joe will be a president who turns our challenges into purpose. Joe will bring us together to build an economy that doesn't leave anyone behind, where a good-paying job is the floor, not the ceiling. Joe will bring us together to end this pandemic and make sure that we are prepared for the next one. Joe will bring us together to squarely face and dismantle racial injustice, furthering the work of generations. Joe and I believe that we can build that beloved community, one that is strong and decent, just and kind, one in which we can all see ourselves. That's the vision that our parents and grandparents fought for, the vision that made my own life possible, the vision that makes the American promise, for all its complexities and imperfections, a promise worth fighting for. So make no mistake, the road ahead is not easy. We may stumble. We may fall short. But I pledge to you that we will act boldly and deal with our challenges honestly. We will speak truths, and we will act with the same faith in you that we ask you to place in us. We believe that our country, all of us, will stand together for a better future. And we already are. We see it in the doctors, the nurses, the home health care workers, and frontline workers who are risking their lives to save people they've never met. We see it in the teachers and truck drivers, the factory workers and farmers, the postal workers and poll workers, all putting their own safety on the line to help us get through this pandemic. And we see it in so many of you who are working, not just to get us through our current crisis, but to somewhere better. There's something happening all across our country. It's not about Joe or me. It's about you. And it's about us. People of all ages and colors and creeds who are, yes, taken to the streets, and also persuading our family members, rallying our friends, organizing our neighbors, and getting out the vote. And we have shown that when we vote, we expand access to health care and expand access to the ballot box and ensure that more working families can make a decent living. And I'm so inspired by a new generation. You are pushing us to realize the ideals of our nation, pushing us to live the values we share: decency and fairness, justice and love. You are patriots who remind us that to love our country is to fight for the ideals of our country. In this election, We have a chance to change the course of history. We're all in this fight. You, me, and Joe, together. What an awesome responsibility. What an awesome privilege. So let's fight with conviction. Let's fight with hope. Let's fight with confidence in ourselves and a commitment to each other, to the America we know is possible, the America we love. And years from now, this moment will have passed, and our children and our grandchildren will look in our eyes, and they're going to ask us, where were you when the stakes were so high? They will ask us, what was it like? And we will tell them. We will tell them not just how we felt, we will tell them what we did. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Well, that is an unusual scene. A solid speech by Kamala Harris as she accepted the nomination of her party. Historic moment. We've spoken about that quite a bit tonight. She's the first woman of color to accept that nomination. She talked a lot about her mother, about family, about what made her who she is. And it was, you know, it's just remarkable, though, to watch this scene in the room where you would normally see delegates across the floor. And it's a surreal experience, and I feel for her because it's a difficult position for her to be in, to stand out there and to try to get that kind of enthusiasm and draw that kind of strength from a crowd that is not there. Thank goodness she has her husband now on stage with her, and they can actually, you know, enjoy this moment together. Joe Biden and Jill Biden are out there too, but the waving to, you know, the crowd, the people at home watching. I'm sorry, I'm with Amy, but I believe our Lisa Desjardins is there in the hall where, there she is, where Kamala Harris was speaking.
This is Dakota News Now.
Good evening, I'm Kelsey Passel.
Glad to have you with us at 13 minutes after 10 o'clock. I'm Brian Allen. As students from pre-K to graduate are either preparing or already heading back to school, we're here.
Possible, yet here I stand.
Of the United States. And Jake, you don't see that very often. I've studied American history a long time. I don't remember a time when the immediate past president was going after the sitting president the way he did.
No, I agree, and I'll talk about President Obama in a second, but first, I don't think we can overstate how significant a moment it is for the girls and women and people of color in the United States and around the world watching this event tonight. What a historic moment for Kamala Harris, senator from California, to get the party nomination for vice president. It really is truly historic and one of these moments that is going to change people's lives and inspire people because of the groundbreaking nature of that. In terms of the contents of her speech, it was interesting. She introduced herself to the American people. There was a lot of very progressive messaging going on there in terms of systemic racism and ideas like that. For the younger people, for the progressives, I think that the Democrats need to turn out talking more about problems in America than about problems with President Trump. I think she...
We have always offered a concierge program where we'll pick your car up.
Election candidate against Donald Trump or any Republican. But tonight for her to do so much biography, so much talking about her mother as the most important person in her life. Just the part where she said, you know, I'm thinking about that 25-year-old Indian woman, all of 5 feet tall, who gave birth to me at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. To turn to that, my mother taught me the service to others gives life purpose and meaning. That's a side of Kamala Harris that is very accessible, I think, and warm and kind of loving in a way that I think she's been so tough as a public figure, she hasn't shown much of that. So that, to me, was a surprise. President Obama's speech tonight slayed me. I'm sure people have different opinions about it because it's a different kind of thing from him, but his warnings that we could potentially be at the end of American democracy scared me, and I found upsetting and hard to watch, but just powerful stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I first of all, I'd just like to co-sign everything that that Rachel Maddow just said, because I agree. You know, to go to President Obama for just a moment, I was lucky enough with E.J. Dionne to write a book about Obama's speeches, right? So President Obama can be a poet. There's a kind of speech he gives, particularly his eulogies, that are all poetry and that take you through these emotional chords of American history. He's a writer, so he speaks like a writer, and he participates in writing his speeches, which is unusual for a politician. And so he has this very poetic and very almost dramatic sort of sense. That was not the kind of speech he gave tonight. This was President Obama saying, I sat in that office and I want you to listen to me because I'm warning you, because I know it from inside the job, that there's a danger here. This was the speech that Obama has given throughout all the speeches I've read or watched that absolutely did feel like the most of a warning. And I think it was warning about the potential end of America. And I mean, that seems dramatic when people say it and people throw around, if we have 4 more years of Trump, the country will end. But there is a fundamental sense that if you break every institution that made it possible for there to be a Barack Obama, it will end. You know, will be another thing. So I think his speech was important. I think it was one of the most important speeches I've ever heard him give. On Kamala Harris, she is extremely nice, right? And so I think that the hard-charging, tough person that we're used to seeing rip apart Bill Barr and make him seem that he's about to need a Depends, right, is the kind of person that we're used to. But she's also capable of just being this. And her story about her mom is so poignant to me personally. I also lost my mom to cancer, so that's the part in which I really probably need a Kleenex, because, you know, losing your mom and not having a mom with you during these big moments in your life when you're achieving big things is so personal that for a politician to explain that and to share that with the public, it's something Barack Obama also understands and dealt with. And I think the pain that politicians bring to the table is what makes them empathetic and makes them real. Joe Biden obviously has exactly the same ability to channel that personal. And she did that tonight. And normally she's fiery in her speeches, but tonight she was really lovely and loving, and I think that was important. I also want to shout out the Elizabeth Warren speech, and I will give the total credit to Rachel, who noticed the BLM in the background.
With the little blocks?
Yes, the little blocks that said Black Lives Matter. Gave me a little bit of life. Love that. And Gabby Giffords. I think that
the Gabby Giffords thing was incredible.
The Gabby Giffords and the oboe, a lot of emotion there. And obviously, this was the all-star team of Democratic women: Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Gabby Giffords. You know, it was an all-star presentation, and I think it was one of the best prosecutions of a sitting president that I've really ever seen.
We'll see, perhaps.
Carl, let's bring in Carl Rove. Carl, your thoughts on President Obama's speech tonight and Kamala Harris's speech tonight, which, as we pointed out, barely needs pointing out. It was just a unique circumstance to look out there and see all of those states. And, you know, she definitely gave it her all, and it was a tough environment.
Yeah, it was. Let me take President Obama. It's a reminder that in these convention speeches, sometimes if you are angry and dislike your political opponent a lot, sometimes you become tone deaf. No interest, he said, in finding common ground. He described Donald Trump as decrying people as un-American. Well, I remember when President Obama dismissed the suggestions of the House Republicans in February of 2009 about a stimulus bill by cutting them off, saying, I won. And I also remember when he invited the chairman of the House Budget Committee, Paul Ryan of Wisconsin, to a speech at George Washington University, and then proceeded to decry the Republican budget proposals as, quote, un-American. So tonight he used that language to condemn President Trump, but there's a little bit of a background there, a little bit of a backstory. And then tonight he said, you know, all Trump wants to do is enrich themselves and their supporters. He's sitting there advocating a candidate who's got a son named Hunter and a brother named James, who have both gotten into a little trouble trading on the name of Joe Biden. So a historic moment tonight. I have to say, I thought it was a pedestrian speech. Maybe it was that she had to give it in that empty room. But I thought the video was great. Her opening remarks about family were terrific, but I think it was pretty pedestrian after that.
Chris Wallace, you know, we heard former President Obama talk about Black Lives Matter. Some of that was very visible throughout the presentation tonight about diversity and Black Lives Matter. Other parts of it were kind of hidden. Behind Elizabeth Warren, we noticed that the block letters in the school classroom, BLM on the wall there, if you see in the back of her, right over her shoulder, BLM, Black Lives Matter, signaling, well, whatever. Chris, go ahead.
You know, I thought there was a magic moment in Kamala Harris's speech, and that was when she said, I accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States of America, and won. And Donna Happ talked about the historic nature of her role now on this ticket, and that is worth celebrating. Having said that, I got to agree with Carl that tonight reminded me nothing so much as Kamala Harris's whole campaign for president. Started out with this huge rally in Oakland, 20,000 people cheering, and she flamed out and was out of the race by the end of 2019 before the first votes in Iowa. I thought there was a lot of Democratic boilerplate, both in the attack on Donald Trump and the praise of Joe Biden. You know, I was thinking in the middle of the speech, I don't remember a word that Tim Kaine or Mike Pence said when they were nominated for vice president in 2016. And my guess is, other than that phrase, I accept your nomination, I'm not sure there's a phrase of Kamala Harris's that will be remembered much after tonight.
All right, we finish up with Dana. Dana, your thoughts?
I think part of that is because that there was no applause. We spent a little bit of today looking at past vice presidents being nominated and getting that applause, and you had that moment, and she didn't have that, so I felt for her. I did think that the speech started off a little slow. I thought maybe you need one of those awake chocolates with the caffeine, but I will say this, she seems reticent to talk about herself, but she seemed very comfortable and animated and excited when she was talking about Joe Biden, and I think if you're the Biden team, you are happy with that, because she is going to be somebody that in this strange environment of campaigning with no people, she'll probably be a very good partner for him.
Well, that wraps us up for tonight.
Distinct choice. I'm not sure that it's a choice he wanted to make, but it's a choice that he probably felt he had to.
And one other point, if I could just make it, is that obviously President Trump has eroded many norms and traditions, and Democrats would say, and that is why Michelle Obama and Barack Obama are changing this, throwing out this tradition out the window. It's obvious that to Barack Obama, to President Obama, he's well aware of how historic what he's doing is, and just as a Philadelphian, to point out where he spoke this evening, the Museum of the American Revolution, which is a part of Philadelphia that is full of all sorts of colonial history and landmarks. That says to me that he knew that he was taking a stand for what our founding fathers back in 1776 were taking a stand for in his mind.
He certainly did. And Anderson, the former president of the United States, made it clear that the stakes for all Americans right now are enormous.
Yeah, talking about 1776, he said, what we do the next 76 days will echo through generations to come. That's a theme he repeated actually twice in this speech. I mean, Neem Lincoln Henderson, a history-making speech from Kamala Harris, and really a history-shaking speech by President Obama. Just an extraordinary speech.
And you saw Kamala at the top of that speech acknowledge that history, acknowledge all of the women who came before her, nameless women in some instances who were stepped on and looked over for centuries in this country, but all the while tried to push it forward. She mentioned Shirley Chisholm, and then she wove her own personal story into that history. I think millions of little brown girls and boys across the globe really looking at this moment, and in many ways maybe thinking that it never could have happened, but you saw something extraordinary tonight. Vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris accepting that nomination, and then the first black president essentially passing the baton to this daughter of immigrants, a father from Jamaica and a mother from India. You know, I came into this day thinking about my grandmothers, Katie Ruth and Bertha May, Katie Ruth from Mississippi and Bertha May from Canada, women who, like the women who you heard Kamala talk about, who never necessarily could have imagined this because of the experiences that they had in their own lives, the experiences of sexism and racism, but kept pushing forward and wanting to expand the idea of what America could look like, and always wanting that seat at the table, but always being denied, not tonight.
You know, Anderson, I'm just watching this unfold tonight. I have to say that watching Barack Obama, this was not a convention speech. This was sort of the new definition of the fierce urgency of now, and I could see him in the Oval Office. It was intimate, and it was chilling, and he was declaring a national emergency. And what he was doing was saying, I need you to save democracy, nothing less. Yes, he talked about what he believes, et cetera, but this was on a higher plane. This was the emergency. And he is saying, you know, you've got to do this now. And you could see it in his voice, you could see it in him.
Let me just read a couple of lines. That everything depends on the outcome of this election, 76 days. Do not let them take away your power. Do not let them take away your democracy. Make a plan right now. He talked to white factory workers, to black mothers, to new immigrants, to young people. And again, he repeated that refrain, what we do echoes through the generation.
Right, and so he's saying, don't let them do this to our country. They can't take the democracy away from us. And so this was sort of a cri de coeur, I don't know what you want to call it, but a president talking to the country, former president talking to the country and declaring an emergency.
Yeah, and David, not screaming in all caps from the White House like President Trump on his Twitter machine, speaking in lowercase with the camera kind of almost looking up at him a little bit. The intimacy of it also was unique.
You know, Anderson, going into this, there was a lot of discussion about, well, Obama's, worried about his legacy in this election. He's fighting for his buddy and all of that. Let me just be really clear, and everybody knows my relationship, okay? I've known this guy for 30 years. We're good friends. I worked with him through many, many speeches. The guy who went to Philadelphia tonight did not go there as a partisan, did not go there as a Democrat. He went there as a person who loves this democracy, believes in it, and with all its imperfections, believes that we have the ability to grab the wheel of history and turn it in the right direction or the wrong direction, and sees this as a critical moment in our history. And he wanted to take this opportunity and talk directly, not just to Democrats, but to the country about this moment. He elevated it. You mentioned the president's tweets. It just accentuates the fact that the one president was taking this to a much higher plane, and the other guy can't get there. He cannot.
He's incapable. There's no way he could ever give a talk like this. Right? He could never give a talk like this. So sitting in his bathroom tweeting is the best he can do.
Well, I don't even think he understood this. The fact that he was sort of hate tweeting in all caps, I don't think he understood at all what Barack Obama was talking about. And Obama was saying, look, I understand why people don't like government. I understand why you're turned off. But just look right ahead. Look at what is happening in this country. And meantime, the president is kind of hate tweeting him. And
well, yeah, I mean, and it was sort of spasmodic tweets of random arguments, just trying to say something to stop, what he was seeing on television, or respond to what he was seeing on television. I also think that the portion of the speech about Joe Biden was very significant, because again, now to return to more mundane matters of electing a president. Joe Biden needed the affirmation. People need to hear that this whole evening, I think, was enlarging for Joe Biden, but Obama's testimony was very important because he did live with Joe Biden in that White House for 8 years, knows him better than anyone else, and can testify in a very credible way. Yeah, he did, and he did rely on him. And I was there. I was a witness to the many times in which Biden was handed very sensitive assignments, in which Biden went behind closed doors with the president and counseled him on the most sensitive decisions that he had to make. And I really think focusing on the role that he played was very important for purposes of this convention, but for purposes of this country, setting the stakes in this election, and making it clear that this is not any other. The fact that he said, I never expected him to continue my policies, what he was saying is, if this were a normal president and a normal election, he would not approach it this way.
He wouldn't be giving that speech.
When Trump,
right, and there was something I was reminded of.
Sorry, David, finish your thought.
Go ahead, Nia. No, what I was going to say is when Trump got elected, Obama made clear, I will not speak out on the day-to-day workings of the presidencies or his decisions, but if there are matters of fundamental constitutional principle or fundamental values, then I feel I must. Tonight, it all culminated in that speech. And I think, I've worked with him on many speeches. This, to me, may be the most historically important one he's ever given.
I mean, in my lifetime, I don't know that I've heard a speech like this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think another important speech, the race speech, also given in Philadelphia. Here he was as the constitutional scholar tonight. That was what he spent his life doing before he got into politics and explaining the Constitution. There's also this theme, I think, that is playing out with all of these people who are coming out and speaking against Donald Trump, essentially saying, we gave him a chance. We had hoped that he would behave in the way that a president should behave, that he would feel the weight and the awesomeness of the office, but that never happened. And you could see, I'm reminded of what Van said, sort of the reluctance that he had to come to this moment. There was a sort of sadness and somberness that here he was having to make this speech in this moment in history, and now having to rally the country, rally those folks who might not have taken this seriously, might not have thought that Donald Trump would behave in this way, and say, listen, it's up to you to save this country in the way that John Lewis and those folks in the 1960s did the same for this country.
Tough. Okay. Thanks, Jay. Coming up next in tonight's Eye on KELO.
No one contacted you. Nobody.
Why a mother says the system failed to keep her son alive as she struggled with addiction. Our KELO News investigation is next.
You'll see how the butterfly house.
To see the school demolished and we had no clue what we were going to do.
It was very surreal, like almost like I didn't know what.
Population has about 40% of the deaths in New York and
right. So they continued fear-mongering with COVID tonight, Kimberly, ignoring the fact that the numbers in Arizona, Texas, Florida are going down. I mean, we're hearing herd immunity in some communities in those states. Red states are opening. But Kimberly, when she talked, Kamala Harris talked about education in the need to have kids in schools, the idea, what? The red state governors want to open their schools. The blue state governors are keeping the schools shut no matter what the COVID record is.
Yeah, there were two notable COVID moments tonight. One was when Barack Obama actually mentioned H1N1.
Because up until now, Democrats have only want to make the comparison to Ebola, which, by the way, is apples and oranges. H1N1 is better, and I was surprised he mentioned it because you know what? Their record on that was absolutely disastrous, especially in terms of making and rolling out a vaccine. So there's some real ground to cover in that for some enterprising journalists. But yet, Kamala Harris talking about the need to educate all of these other candidates sitting in empty classrooms as though this is somehow Donald Trump's fault. It is the blue state governors that aren't acknowledging the need to get kids back to school. It's teachers unions who are refusing to go back or suing or threatening sickouts. You know, it's the states out there that are trying to actually make this work and recognizing the needs to balance the economy and education along with dealing with the virus that are ones that are moving the country forward. And that's the approach this White House has been pushing too.
And finally, Molly, really quickly, when we have Elizabeth Warren in a classroom and in the background it says BLM spelled out, you know, it's like the what can you find in the room game. And a lot of people online were saying this is foreshadowing, and I know all of you have written a version of this, this is foreshadowing the 1619 project coming into public schools with that little Elizabeth Warren, you know, 3-letter spell out in the background. That was purposely done, obviously.
Well, that, and also, I've been finding interesting that Democrats are talking about schools in any sense. Now, teachers' unions are very much a part of the Democratic coalition, but teachers' unions are kind of at odds with the children and their families when it comes to reopening schools or whether children should be banned from schools. But also they are the means by which a lot of this progressive ideology gets filtered into the classroom, and it is something that teaches that the country is irredeemably evil, as opposed to, you know, I liked actually what President Obama said at the beginning of his speech. I wish he would have carried it through to talking about why this desire to overthrow our system is so wrong.
Yeah, panel, great to see you tonight. Thanks so much for sticking around and speaking.
But there was an intimacy to his call to action and his urgency, and I think we all need to heed it. And if we don't, you know, the whole enterprise could be over, Brian.
Well, that was Robert Gibbs. That was, of course, the undercurrent. That's what historians will take away from tonight, that the American people, absent campaign hyperbole, were told for the first time in their history by a former occupant of the Oval Office that democracy itself is under threat. And I also, Robert, want to read you the work of Peter Baker in today's New York Times. This is adjacent. After watching President Trump systematically demolish many of his achievements, Mr. Obama has almost as much at stake in this year's campaign as his former vice president and his party's 2020 presidential nominee, Joe Biden, does. A second chance to redeem his legacy and prove to history that Mr. Trump's election was an anomaly, not a permanent repudiation. Robert, all that leaves out, in making it personal, both can be true at the same time. All that leaves out is, by the way, folks, your democracy is in danger.
Well, and I think he did a remarkable job setting out the stakes of what is on the line in November. And I agree with David. I've heard that line of fierce urgency of now from Barack Obama so many times, and you could feel it. Look, I thought he was overcome by emotion walking us through that argument. I think it was also important, if you take this back to his 2004 speech, he also attacks the cynicism of letting this moment get the most of you and what you have to do to pull yourself up and become involved. And I wholeheartedly agree with David. I think the idea, both with Michelle's speech and with Barack's speech tonight, the ability for us to not pay attention to the crowd shots or funny hats or having them try to talk over a crowd, we could focus one-on-one. I felt like with Michelle's speech, I felt like I was having coffee with her. With Barack's speech, I felt like I was in the backyard at a barbecue and he was walking through what's at stake. And I think that will become more powerful and more consequential as we re-listen to those words. It wasn't a lecture. It was just a simple, here's what's at stake, take it from me. I'm one of the few people in the country's history that has sat in that office and made those decisions.
Robert, while I have you, for your team to win, it of course means the incumbent has to be defeated. The incumbent who was, again, tweeting in all caps, real time, while his predecessor was giving such a harsh speech. Here is an exchange from the briefing room today that I want your take on.
When I listen to that and then I see the horror that he's left us, the stupidity of the transactions that he made. Now, President Obama did not do a good job, and the reason I'm here is because of President Obama and Joe Biden, because if they did a good job, I wouldn't be here.
So, Robert, how do you personally process that? How does the most popular president in the land process that?
Well, I don't think he processes it all that personally. I think, look, elections after 8 years of one party are uniquely changed elections. And we've seen that throughout our history. I think what was important for Obama today was to, again, to lay out what he sees as the real stark reminder of what's at stake, and to think through and to walk us all through what he sees as important. And I think the power of it, the softness of the tone, the emotion in the delivery. Look, I'm a big believer now that if Donald Trump wants to tweet and give press conferences and do events, Democrats ought to encourage him to do twice as much, because it does nothing but turn off voters. It does nothing but walks, lock in 44 or 45% and lose 55%. And I think if you look at the popularity of somebody like former President Obama, there's a reason that he spoke at this time, on this day in this convention, because he still has a big sway over people that will ultimately decide this election, a small sliver of people that have decided to fire the incumbent and want to be reassured that they can hire Joe Biden and get competent leadership.
Treat to be able to talk to you guys, veterans of Obama team, the David Plouffe and Robert Gibbs. Our thanks for joining us yet again tonight. An historic evening we have just witnessed from various sections of our country electronically. Coming up, we will further go through night 3 of this convention with our guest, Claire McCaskill.